All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Hash Church episode 134. Much appreciated that you guys all made it. Sorry for a little bit of the lateness. A little bit tardy this morning as I was rushing back from Whistler, as today is, of course, my son's last day of ski school. Happy Easter to everyone out there that is celebrating with their little children. Such a sweet, sweet experience to watch your 2-year-old come out of the bedroom and be so excited. Now, my wife has always bought the plastic eggs and put like really healthy like nuts and pieces of fruit and stuff inside of there. At least when the kids are really young, unnecessary sugar doesn't seem to be really something that they need to do when they're only 2 years old, but very cool. Thought it was kind of a cool play out to the day. Missed it, but got to see the video. So I guess we're going to send this chat room hangout here real quick. Let me bring the crew in, because this isn't a wake and bake. This isn't Bubble Man by himself. No, this is the whole crew. We're going to get the panelists in here. Etienne, Mark Scaldone, Tony, and Todd. We got Kevin McKernan coming in today to share a little bit with us. Hopefully he has some interesting things to say. Of course, he's in the same boat as me with ski season. It's always a little bit hard for him to get on Hash Church during this time of the year. However, out on the East Coast, it's pretty much over now. So I guess we'll see him on Hash Church a little more than we have in the past. All right, getting everything over here. Inviting, we got almost 400 people in the room. That's very sweet, very sweet. Hopefully the link has worked. Yes, I see it has. It has. Welcome, Todd.
Good morning, bro.
How are you doing today, Todd?
I woke up early just for you, Mark.
Oh, I appreciate it, dude. Todd, of course, is always backing me up just in case I can't get there on time. So we do appreciate that. How's my sound? I should probably go get my headphones, hey?
You sounds great, but there's a little echo, but it sounds great.
Yeah, I want to get my headphones. I'll be right back if you guys want to hold court for me.
Sure. Okay,
Morning,
you can
Todd.
talk. No, I'm just kidding.
Good morning, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to Hash Church. We're running a few minutes late, but we're here. We're doing fine. Todd's got his giggle on because he's usually just sitting there going, "Oh, this thing on."
I'm just glad I didn't have to wake up and actually do anything, is all I'm saying.
And again, congratulations on your freedom.
I'm not free. I'm an American. We're all screwed. I'm just joking. Everybody say that when I get out of jail. Dude, you're free. I'd be like, if I was free, would I have gone to prison in the first place for growing flowers? Flowers. I grew flowers, really. That was my crime. What'd you do? I grew flowers. What'd you do? I robbed a bank. It's
like celebrating that moment in time where they took everything away from you and it cost you 50 to 100K, and then you didn't actually end up in prison, which was totally unreasonable anyway. And people are like, "You won, dude. You won."
Right. And you're like, nah, I didn't win anything. Actually, I had to pay for this. Really?
Oh, shit. Well, welcome to Mr. Scaldone and Mr. Burfellow into the room.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Doc.
What's happening?
Happy Jesus Zombie Day.
Happy Jesus Baby Zombie Day.
Yeah, right.
I thought he comes out of his tomb, and if he sees his shadow, you get 3,000 more years of Catholicism. Is that true?
It worked.
I heard that actually, as they were strapping me with a strap in Catholic Church. They were telling me that very thing, but
because they loved you. Didn't want to lose you to Satan.
Shout out to Buck Nasty, the Player Haters Club, Charlie Murphy, R.I.P. brother. I only met him once and got to chill with him one time with my wife at a club. We were sitting at our own private little table, and he got brought over before his stand-up show, and it was the only seat, so him and his bodyguard sat with us. And I just wanted to say shout out to Charlie Murphy. Some of the greatest comedy ever from the Chappelle Show came from the true Hollywood stories that Charlie Murphy told about Rick James and Prince. And I just had to get that out because I was sad to see that he passed away. Didn't even know he was sick. I guess he's a private guy. But yeah, if you're bored later on today, maybe watch some reruns of Chappelle Show or check out some YouTube on Charlie Murphy. The guy was really hilarious, and he has passed. And of course, the world of comedians is a little bit less off because of it.
Right.
His Rick James story from the Chappelle Show is without a doubt comedy history gold there. And then the Prince stories from the game blouses, fucking best shit ever.
Well, because it wasn't made up. The fact that it was true, the fact that it was true, but it was so out there. It really, to me, was the funniest shit that came out of the Chappelle Show. And to me, the Chappelle Show was pretty much the funniest thing on television at the time. So shout out to Charlie Murphy. I will smoke a bong rip for Charlie Murphy, of course. Guy was always down for puffing. When he sat at our table, he puffed tough with us. And
I was going to say that Charlie was a medical cannabis user. And it was pretty incredible that he kept his disease secret until he passed away. People that, we worked with didn't even know. I read something. He didn't want it to define who he was. And I totally relate to that. For years after I got over having cancer when I was 10, when I was like 12, 13, 14, I didn't want my friends to know I had cancer because I hid it like it was some kind of embarrassing disease because I just didn't want that to always be around me. Oh, poor Todd. I fucking hated it. I hated it so much. So I really related to that when I realized that he kept it to himself until he passed.
Well, it's a personal thing. Your mortality is an extremely personal thing. And everyone's going to deal with the end of it differently.
Was it leukemia?
Yeah, he was a hero all the way. He just braved it in the face and smiled all the way to the end. And I just think that it's beautiful. It just shows how strong his spirit really was.
And what a great smile.
I saw pictures of him dabbing too, so he was hitting it hard.
Yeah, the picture that you saw, was he dabbing a Heathstone pipe?
I don't remember looking. It may have been, but he was definitely hitting that motherfucker hard.
Yeah, right on. That was a friend of mine, Maddie, who lit him up with that. That was in Vancouver the same night that I met him. It's just a photo I saw circulating quite a bit. Oh my goodness, thank you. Easter treats from the wife. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Always taking care of me off camera. My beautiful lady.
So do you hide the eggs for the kids for Easter or anything like that?
My wife buys these plastic eggs and then puts healthy treats inside of them, like strawberries and pineapples and cut up fruits and nuts and stuff. And when the kids are 2 and 3, they're just as happy with that than any sort of toxic chemical poison.
My kids get 5s and 10s rolled up in those little Easter eggs because the nuts and candies don't cut it anymore.
Yes. It's funny because I also have older kids, and I guess we'll probably have to start taking a book or a page out of the Scaldone book because my 16-year-old daughter is definitely not interested in plastic eggs with strawberries inside.
So that's what you do.
Of 5s and 10s or 20s.
So, Doc, are you just too lazy to go to the store? Or just figured, fuck it.
This is totally my wife's department. As you can see, I'm not in my home digs. We're down at my in-laws in Florida, and so this all has to be transported on a plane and transported home. And greenbacks are easy to get back.
Convenience of parenting sometimes.
Absolutely, man. Throw money at it and it goes away.
So we had some pretty major news here in Canada. I did invite a bunch of the Canadian contingency, hoping that they would make it in today. I can't promise they will. I invited Chris Bennett, Jody Emery, and Dana Larson, kind of 3 of the louder activists in our country, doing things differently, but really doing things quite efficiently, especially the Emerys and Dana Larson with his seed giveaway, giving away I think over 1 million seeds, just packing seeds for 10 hours a day with crews of people to mail them out. He even went back to Calgary recently, which I think was balls to the wall because last year they arrested him for giving out seeds. He went back to Calgary this year. The cops were totally cool. I saw pictures of them smiling and laughing with the people in the outside in the audience, so to speak, before they went in. And welcome, Indra. And they just didn't touch him. He gave away seeds the whole time. He went to Calgary. He went to I believe he went to Newfoundland, where they also said that they were definitely not going to allow him to just come and traffic marijuana, as in give away seeds. And so I hope that they come out because Canada just passed some pretty big, it's a pretty big deal what Canada just recently did. Welcome, Kevin, as well as John, to the room. Just talking about Canada's recent laws that they're sort of announcing, legislator for, I guess, what you want to call legalization. From the majority of the activism standpoint, it's just, complain, almost the same way people complained about OMA. There are, there are fucked up things from like, passing a joint to a 13 or a 14-year-old kid can get you like 14 years in prison. That's the maximum sentence now. And I'll have you know that Canada has all sorts of fucked up maximum sentences that we've never actually given anyone. So for instance, Jody and Mark Emery are currently facing life in prison, which is 25 years in jail here in Canada. And the reason they're facing that is because in Canada, anything over, I want to say 3 kilos is the maximum fine is life in prison, which is here in Canada 25 years. So there's all sorts of fucked up rules that are already on the books here in Canada that they don't exercise that right. So I'm personally more focused on the fact that we can all grow some plants. Anyone that's over 18 years old, unless the province decides that they want it to be an older age, like 19, 20, 21, whatever, I guess they're going to allow each province, which is the equivalent to a state here in Canada. And well, there's Johnny B. He'll probably have a little bit to share on the topic. We're just talking about the Canada legalization topic here, John, in regards to some of the shittier things that, of course, people are focused on, and then some of the good things. I'm more of a foot in the door guy. I don't think it's great legislation, but I think it's amazing for the fact that they are going up against the largest world agenda that is against cannabis, and they're still saying we're legalizing it. So you got to think that they're fighting a pretty like serious fucking beast when it comes to trying to produce federal legislation for legalization. That's all I wanted to say.
So so you've had a little time to digest this, gentlemen. So what are the negatives that you're like, fuck it, and then what are the positives, like, you can't not do this?
Say again?
What are the negatives first? I always like bad news first. And then what are the positives?
Okay, well, the negatives would be like any type of jail. The fact that they're still enforcing cannabis law as though it were illegal, rather than losing all of that silly legislation that's going to put, for instance, you have a license to grow, or you have the ability to grow 4 plants. It's not a license thing. It would be a legalization legislation for anyone over 18. Well, if you grew 5 plants, mandatory minimum of like multiple years in jail. Now, it's very unlikely that that's going to be the case, but the fact that it's there is scary, and it's definitely something that will be practiced against through civil disobedience and changed instantly, along with the height of the plant limits, the limit of the amount of bud that you can have. But for now, we've got limitations of 100 centimeters, 4 plants, as well as 30 grams to carry with you. So I've already heard tons of people tripping up. How am I supposed to only carry 30 grams? And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know any of my friends that smoke 30 grams in a session.
Is that just flowers, or is that concentrates too?
I would suspect, because in Canada for the MMAR, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, John, that cannabis, the judge removed dried from the word marijuana. And when he did that in the Owen Smith case, it changed the definition of cannabis to being not just dried bud, but actually to cover the entire cannabis plant. And that's how we first got permission to start doing extracts in Canada. So I suspect, or is hash even allowed in the legislation for the 4 plants, John, or is that still on hold as well?
Sorry, guys. I've been trying to kind of get my stuff here together. So I did a lot of reading. I've read the bill. We talked about it yesterday on Cannabis Culture News with Dana and stuff like that, actually on Friday. So the bill is kind of interesting. Now, when it comes to any solventless or non-solventless extracts, any kind of butane, any kind of thing, it's not allowed. So you can squish your buds, heat and resin, and mechanical separation doesn't say anything about that, or washing with water. So, but there is no solvent or solventless extract. So what this means is there's a whole list of them, butane, the leamine, all that's in there, that you can't use any kind of solvent for extractions. When it comes to growing, it's 4 plants. And it's per household. So I really took a look at that, and it's the dwelling house, and it says in the dwelling house. The dwelling house consists of anything on the property, outbuilding, garden, your front yard, wherever you can kind of basically at that point, but you can't cure it by the sounds of it outside for smell. There's a lot of things with this whole bill on if an 18-year-old sells a joint to a 17-year-old, he can do 10 years in jail. That's kind of ridiculous, right?
Right, but do you
driving
think,
offenses.
but he can is so unlikely, though. You know, the fact that it's
The
there.
whole thing is
For instance, it's illegal to sell bongs in Canada. Every store in Canada that's selling bongs could face time in prison. That's on our books, but our police don't actually do it.
You're right, but here's one thing that really came to light. They spent $2.3 billion on cannabis law enforcement last year. Then they put in this new bill, and they're going to put it through. They're going to spend more on cannabis enforcement. It's a money maker, the way I look at it. So now they have to inspect all these houses that are over 30 grams. They're doing this. It's just a money wheel, guys. I mean, it's legalization. We're able to start carrying, but you know what? I mean, it's legalization with no advertising. They got to put it behind closed doors. You can't advertise, sponsor events. I can't sponsor any more events in Canada. I can't go Mad Tater. They can't do Crop King. Can't do Bowman. We can't sponsor any more events. No more advertising. No more printing company names.
Can I just throw this out there, though? You know, you guys, Canada being you guys, have come so significantly far from not being allowed to sell books about cannabis in the early 90s to now here. I can't imagine that whatever legislation they put down is going to go through nothing but a changing curve as people adopt to the new and relaxed lifestyle and the freedoms that they have, because unenforceable is going to be what they find a lot of their stupidity. And we're going to see it in California, where you have tens of millions of legal plants in millions of households growing. They're not going to have the manpower to be able to do what they think they're going to do. I mean, nature is very impressive.
It's what they put into. Like I said, they put $2.3 billion into cannabis law enforcement. So with the new laws, they can continue. It's a money-making thing in a way. So we have legalization, but they're going to enforce that legalization, and they can do that with more jobs, more. It's just the way I look at the way society runs. I mean, it's a money wheel. Same thing. Well,
you know what, John, though, unfortunately, since the MMAR has started, it's been a money thing. And 100%. not for the government, for all the people who have had protection. So it's kind of always been a money thing, but now different people with bigger money are getting involved, and the smaller people are like, oh my God, this is terrible. This is a money thing. All they're doing is making money. And I'm like, kind of like you've been doing for the last 25 years, or is it different? Like, I'm just curious.
But that's what I mean. Everything around prohibition has been about money, from locking us up to stealing our property to every little bit. Us having to buy lawyers, everything.
The seizure laws are insane. Like, they can pull you over and they can trust you. There's no there's no 3 new law enforcements around driving offenses related to alcohol, cannabis. Now it's mandatory.
Dude,
if an officer feels like that you can drinking.
We will shut that down, bro. We will absolutely. People like you, John, and myself will absolutely shut that down.
That means I can never drive again, because
that's it. Exactly. It's impossible.
Better quality of life, and I'm fine.
But what if we go and get ourselves tested while heavily therapeutically medicated? Because, you know, it's why Vice contacted me recently. They want me to go out to Toronto at the end of the month, and there's some high-profile politician. I don't know if it's going to be Bill Blair or if it's going to be Trudeau or whoever, someone deeply involved in legalization, and they want me to ask them the question about, now it's not in regards to driving, but it's in regards to records. For people like myself who have a record for cannabis, but now years later have legal businesses, do consulting for legal companies, have my own legal cannabis business in multiple countries, should I hold a possession record for something that is completely not illegal in my country anymore? So that's the question that's going to be. Things like that, to me, we've already got our foot in the door. It's going to be very, very easy to show them that people who are under the influence of cannabis and feel so affected by it won't drive. They just won't. It's not alcohol.
It's not like I go and do big dabs and go for a drive. I sit at your place always. We do Puff Wednesdays. I always wait a couple hours before I get behind the wheel and drive home. I'm not doing dabs while driving. So it's the same thing, right? I mean, it's the same thing as going and having dinner and having a glass of wine. It's not the same thing.
You can't drink all day and then reasonably operate any machinery.
No, you can't.
If you wake up at 9 a.m. and start drinking like I smoke weed, no, by 9 p.m. you're fucking squashed. But on cannabis, it's a whole other world. And I mean, everyone watching this has had a cop pull behind them while they were stoned, and they have felt their buzz immediately leave their body. And and
True.
it is a different trip. I mean, the anxiety when you see a cop behind you blows whatever good buzz or high you've already got from cannabis, and it's not the same. Alcohol, you can't leave. I mean, I would love to see a cop stop, an X Games rider while he's stoned on weed and be like, okay, listen, I got to have you do a sobriety because those backflips looks like you're high.
And you know what? I'm down with the sobriety in a sense, but what Canada's trying to do is measure your THC levels in your bloodstream, which is, it's not an accurate description of intoxicated or whatever the term they're using. It's not accurate in any way, shape, or form. So trust me, with the civil disobedience that we have already gained foot of in Canada, this whole driving one is not going to hold. It's just not.
Here's my question. I have a question about this, Bubble Man.
Shoot.
So you're driving along in your self-driving car and you're sitting in the back seat, smoking like crazy, and a cop pulls up behind you. You can stop worrying, right?
I would think so. I mean,
no, you're still operating the car. You're
not driving.
The car is just like cruise control it's a fancy cruise control.
Well, I guess, in the future, these cars might get to a next level where they are, well, absolutely they will, where they'll be able to drive more accurately than humans could possibly even try to attain.
So how do people who drink at a bar get home from the bar, right? There's a parking lot where everyone parks their cars. They're parked at the bar.
Why?
Yet they after drinking at the bar and after watching a football game or a baseball game, they get in their car and they drive home, right? Aren't they intoxicated? They were just at a place where they were invited.
Not necessarily. I mean, under the current liquor laws, there's a progression. You're allowed to have a drink or two before they feel that you're intoxicated, and it depends, of course, on how much you weigh. And I mean, it should be about intoxication, because the truth of the matter is why I think it's a little ironic that they're going to stop people from smoking cannabis and then operating heavy machinery because of the fact that Marinol's already been legal to drive and operate machinery since the 80s. I mean, if you looked at when Marinol was a Schedule II in the 90s, it never said you can't drive anymore. It said do not operate heavy machinery until you're familiar with the experience, familiar with the drug. It says that on a lot of pharmaceuticals.
Yep.
So I think there's
an
exercised responsibility. And if you eat a couple edibles with 500 milligrams of THC, you sure the hell should not be operating anything. Right?
Right. But at the same time, you wouldn't. It's not like alcohol. It doesn't like convince you that you are awesome and can do. You're like, yeah. It's like if you ate some 500 milligram edible and were like sitting there drooling, the last thing on your mind would be like, I should go to 7-Eleven right now and get like a root beer. I'm going to drive there. I'm just going to jump in my car. Everything will be fine. It just doesn't happen like that. And really, the people who know this more accurately than anyone are 911 operators who take the calls when highway traffic fatalities and accidents involving death or extreme injuries. Alcohol is present, like I want to say 9 out of 10 times. Not cannabis, alcohol. Don't compare them. That's the flaw. The flaw in the logic is that these people who have been lying about cannabis for so long, who have basically turned the THC molecule into the black sheep, who are currently trying to create the CBD molecule as the valedictorian football player, blonde hair, blue-eyed awesomeness. And it's all just, it's just not accurate. There's no accuracy in comparing cannabis, a medicine that our bodies can use to regulate all of our biological functions, versus alcohol, something that is recreationally used throughout the world and is very responsible for large tears on the social fabric, from like families falling apart to kids and white women being beat. I mean, we all know what alcohol does. Sure, there are small percentages of people who enjoy it and love it and have a drink, but you get a big enough group together drinking it, and there's just always going to be that one person. You get a whole bar full of them, like Mark Scaldone was mentioning. I'm guaranteeing you people are driving out of those bars hammered.
So clearly the thing is, go buy all your munchies before you get high.
That's it. I mean, we know that since like grade 10 or whatever. We figured that out. It's like, I don't want to have to walk back through the house and have my parents see me. We got to come home with this shit, then puff, then eat. Now, quickly, I'm going to transfer the conversation because Kevin McKernan's been so kind to come in with us today. He's wanted to talk a little bit about these portable PCR things that he's got going on. So why not give you the floor, Kevin?
Well, I was going to ask folks if anyone on the ethanol receptor. Right? Can you guys hear me?
The liver.
Yeah,
It's called
right?
the liver, and it's highly titratable.
But a good correlation between blood alcohol content and impairment. We don't have that with THC. And it's people are known to upregulate after use. So there are people that are medicated, probably completely functional at 5 nanograms per ml in their blood. Across to people is today, you can easily have a functional test on the road that's, either an iPad or something that measures, which is a holdover from the way alcohol behaves. So it doesn't seem as if I've not seen the correlation between THC in the blood or metabolite in the blood with impairment.
Is there anything scientific that can back up the fact that I think a cop can scare your buzz away?
Oh, I agree, dude. It's called a bioassay, and it is accurate. Not only from cannabis, I've had a mushroom buzz blow right out the back door.
Not so much on the mushrooms. I just thought the cop would be friendly on mushrooms. I was like, a nice cop. I was wrong.
Adrenaline kills all highs, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so for me, I was pretty high on mushrooms, got pulled over, got arrested, got sent to jail. And I'm not going to lie, I was no longer high on mushrooms. That vibe was like
gone.
Well, maybe there's
alcohol, though, it doesn't work with, but it's not a high, like Indra just said. It's really a low, but it doesn't work. You can't use anxiety to get rid of drunkenness.
So is adrenaline then the binder to the? Does it bind to CB1 receptors, CB2 receptors? Is that why it is officially killed?
I think there's an unknown endocannabinoid called paranoidamide, and it's emitted every time you see, like David Crosby said, when I look in my rear view mirror and see a police car, and you got your freak flag flying, whether it's a long hair or a fish sticker or a Grateful Dead sticker, and they got you pegged as being someone who they need to pull over. So yeah, there could be an endocannabinoid that's emitted that sort of acts as the buzzkill thing, Todd. Maybe, who knows?
They do have a paper out on ADHD under the influence of cannabinoids being better drivers.
I always felt that.
I think you're
Well, the Jamaican study, and there was the Dutch, I think, also did studies. The various countries who have done studies on driving in cannabis and found that people drive safer, 1 mile per hour, usually under the speed limit. They're more cautious. They're not as reckless.
Technically, the way the test showed is that at first they made more mistakes than the straight group and less mistakes than the drunk group. But over the course of a few hours, the cannabis users ended up making less mistakes than even the straight group, and they associated with losing interest in the activity because the stoners were more were focusing longer on the task than the people that were straight and started playing with the radio or thinking about whatever else they wanted to be doing, which is really significant because on long trips, a stoner would be a safer driver than somebody that was straight.
Well, once again, the stereotype is that smoking cannabis or, using cannabis is going to cause confusion and loss of focus and lack of memory, when really that's not the case all the time at all. And guaranteed when you're talking about the X-game athlete, the pro skier, the pro snowboarder, who's puffing before he goes and does his triple backflip off the 80-foot cliff, that's serious stuff. That's like life or death. You make a mistake in that and you're done.
At CanMed earlier this week, we heard of Eben Britton, who was a NFL football player who used cannabis before his best games. He said his concentration was intensified while he was on cannabis, and it was cannabis that he thought attributed really to the best games in his career. Wasn't that right, Kevin? He was talking about using it before and after, not just for pain, but for focus and concentration.
A good point there was that he had AP Press came and started filming this, and thank God Martin Lee stood up. Isn't THC playing a role? And they who was it? Ricky Williams who just basically said, "Yeah, everyone."
Right. Yeah, it was Ricky.
So good to get that out there because they're all pushing a really heavy CBD story. They know that THC seems to still be the redheaded stepchild.
Is anyone else having Kevin come through a little choppy? You know what? If you've got time to read,
Am I breaking up? Is this better if I get closer?
well, I'm not sure. I think you might have a shitty internet connection. Try closer.
Yeah, here, let me. All right, I'll come.
You may want to try restarting it, Kev. You are just every other word you're just cutting out completely.
Yeah, and I'd really like to hear
Alright.
what you have to say when we start talking about the PCR desktop
Cool.
unit.
Yeah. I want to hear you clearly for sure.
All right, cool. Kevin's going to come back. We got 700 live viewers. We got a whole schwack of people in the chat room right now talking about a bunch of different things. I guess still mostly talking about cops and getting pulled over. And yeah, that'll be a nice thing when it's a thing of the past, won't it?
No, not only that, I'm reading here that the new ICM news came out today, and the top one was patients who use cannabis reduce their use in medication of pain, anxiety, migraine, and sleep disorders. And of 1,500 patients that were polled across the USA, over 3/4 indicated that, which is 76.7%, indicated that they reduced their use of opioids.
That's huge.
Well, the science is backing up what we've all anecdotally known and we have seen firsthand. It's just the science is, after them laughing at us for all these years saying, oh, you're high, they're just trying to say it so you can just get high. The science is actually backing it up with reality, you know.
Well, you know, but Dr. Bob said the perfect quote the other day. He wrote something down that was in regards to a story, and it was a miraculous story of someone, you know, shrinking their tumor or saving, you know, putting their disease into remission, whatever it was. And I just really read his quote, but it was like, you know, most of us that are, you know, deeply involved in the cannabis community here are no longer surprised by this. Like that in itself is a sort of discovery when there's a group of people that are like, yeah, absolutely. Like, of course you can do that. Of course, that's a possibility that apoptosis is real. We're pretty sure it's 100%. I think that's great.
All right, Kevin's back.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
Kev?
How's that? Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
We
that's
can hear
better.
you.
It sounded pretty good.
Through the mic.
So it sounds like it was a very successful conference because you pulled from a wide range of people for your conference, but of course to have professional athletes then start to bring the focus beyond just the pain management, but to start talking about focus and how it helps them. I mean, I know I've used cannabis for focusing on high stressful situations to help me pinpoint and come to problem solving situations. So it's interesting now to have it come out, one, in the media, much less of a high elevated professional that is, you know, on the sports circuit, which everybody can understand and realizes how very difficult and challenging it is, one, to be in that position, but then to think that using cannabis then aids you in the ability to do better.
Well, us musicians have known that cannabis has been a performance enhancing drug for years, and I guess now the athletes have found out too.
As well as us who just love music, love to listen to it. We also figured that out.
Right.
But
All
Mark,
the freaks in the audience too.
but doctor, I also remember when I go on stage, you know, when I play or even when I speak, no matter, you still have your anxieties, you still have your nervousness, but I also find I lose my high when I go on stage. I mean, I get high up to a point, but that whole high of being on stage and being in front of people is a whole other.
That's why I smoke dabs while I'm on stage.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
nothing,
get to continue.
nothing blew my buzz faster than fucking getting totally stoned and then walking out on stage at Woodstock and seeing all those people feeling way straight all of a sudden.
Dude.
Yeah,
Much less seeing your face on that huge screen like that.
that was fucking horrible. Yeah.
Hey, you know what though, Todd? Talk about joining a group of unique individuals who have walked out onto the stage at Woodstock way too fucking high, looked out at the people. I mean, that's a classic group of people, man. Like, I'm sure Jerry was on that list. I'm sure Jimmy was on that list.
But you listen to what actually Santana did and realize how tripping he was.
Yeah,
and what he couldn't even look at his guitar because he thought his guitar neck was a snake attacking him.
Dude,
that's how high he was.
Someone was dosing everyone. I'm sure it was probably Al.
No, he was supposed to go on later, supposedly, and then they said he had to go on and he was like peaking. But obviously, we all loved him peaking. His guitar sound while peaking was pretty amazing.
I appreciated it.
No, it was cool. I was glad I got to do that. They were all really nice, and I couldn't have been the only one that walked out on that stage way too fucking high. No.
No, you're in a
But
you're
it
in a
went away
unique
way
list.
fast. No, it did.
Adrenaline is. Oh, go ahead.
You get lost in a moment, you get lost in a moment. And like Trey says, I love this, is the musician is just the hose, and you're just hosing the audience with all that energy. The water is flowing through you. The water is the music, and you're just the conduit, man. You're just letting that shit just flow and just sprinkle all out over the audience. It's a magical feeling. It really is.
I've astral projected on stage. It's one of the most amazing sensations I've ever had playing live before, and I've never found a drug to replicate it. No DMT, no acid, ketamine. None of them have ever been able to replicate that sensation.
Wow, that's amazing.
Todd, you were on the stage at Woodstock?
Yeah, I actually opened Woodstock 99 on Friday, and then I also performed. I was in Spitfire on Saturday. I did a 20-minute set. I actually did a 40-minute set because Kennedy got booed off stage on Friday, and then I did a 20-minute on Saturday with Mickey Hart of the Grateful Dead, and I was also on that day with Kenneth Cole, or Kenneth Cole was Sunday.
Just to be clear, John, this is 1999, not 1969.
Not 1969.
Yeah, I was
it
wondering.
was,
I don't
99.
remember seeing him. I was at Woodstock in '69, and I don't recall seeing you on the stage.
No, it was 99. Actually, I was on the West stage with a group called Spitfire, and what we were doing was talking about different social issues. So Mickey Hart didn't play music when we were on stage together. He talked about the devastation of destroying the last 2% of old growth redwood trees, because he was introducing my friend Julia Butterfly, who had at the time had been doing a tree sit for what lasted 2 years in a redwood tree protesting Hurwitz and destruction. So we were all trying to bring different attention to different stuff. I was, of course, over there talking about the drug war, and I made comparisons to how in 99 the group that was Woodstock was protesting the war thousands of miles away in Vietnam, and now that war had socially moved on to the people that were Woodstock, because Nixon waged a war on the voices against what he was doing. And it was our drugs, it was the acid and the pot and the mushrooms that were illegal, but the alcohol and the cigarettes, shit, in 99 you had Budweiser sponsoring Woodstock. How fucked up is that culturally?
Yeah, I mean, they burned the place down too.
Yeah, there was a lot of hangovers by Sunday. And, hey, alcohol to me is what it is. We've all seen the ugly side of it, and I think a lot of us are really tired of it. I can't wait, honestly, in the future to see pot-only parties, because we've seen a lot of alcohol-only events. It would be so nice to see cannabis-only events and to see the difference in the lack of violence I'm sure that there would be if it was just everybody on cannabinoids instead of boozed out.
Yeah, it's a big difference. It's like you see someone with a black eye at an alcohol event, you're like, who punched you? You see someone with a black eye at a cannabis event, you're like, edible?
Yeah, and technically anybody watching, if they go pick up the DVD version of Spitfire, and you'll see I'm actually on the DVD being interviewed about Spitfire, which I couldn't fucking believe it, because they had, Rosie Perez, Mickey Hart, Michael Ferrani, all these great people, and they chose me to represent Spitfire on the Woodstock DVD. So I was like, there had to be a stoner in editing, is what I thought.
Right.
Wasn't the Emerald Cup the exactly what you just asked about? Everybody there was high on cannabinoids.
Well, there were people. Remember, there were people in the corrals, the alcohol corrals, that were there, and they were full. I'm not
where you were, John. Yes, where you were, where we found you in the medical section. Yeah, we were all in a happy place. But over down by the food, there was a beer corral where all the beer drinkers were in a cage. And I don't describe. Look, I am not a prohibitionist by any means. I've gone out, had drinks, come home, hadn't hurt anybody. But we've all experienced concerts, sports, games, events that are only alcohol. You have to go sneak away to have your joint. It would just be so nice to have a full reversal of that.
I'll tell you one thing. Go ahead, Andrew.
I just miss the alcohol scene because I never find it. I've never drank in my life. And so somehow spirit doesn't lead me around to where the alcohol scene was. So I missed that while we were at the cup. Not that I was missing anything, because it's nothing to miss. But I'm a little bit bummed to hear that there was an alcohol thing going on there. I thought it was all hippies and hash and high and oh, well, reality slaps you in the back of the head and says, are you paying attention?
Well,
Yeah,
Sonoma
the
County
lobby-
Fairgrounds is a cool place, and yeah, everybody there act reasonably. The Emerald Cup did not experience, to my knowledge, any fights or any violence. Maybe I'm wrong. We can have Tim on to talk to him about it, but I don't think the Emerald Cup, in my experience, has really been ever violent.
I hope it never is. Violence is an outmoded expression of human angst.
The only violence there is the sifting going on.
Thrashing, just
The
thrashing.
violence happens inside my room when I'm taking down the plants.
Well, we were pretty violently mashing up that dabber.
Hey, I think it's
Well-
time for a dab, actually. Considering that it's Easter, let us all pull out our eggs.
Yeah, okay, I'll go get my egg.
Gotta pull out your egg.
Mine's a tad circular.
Hey, that works. That works.
That is not an egg, man.
That's an egg.
How dare you call that an egg?
Did you paint your egg?
With resin.
And that's the only way to paint an egg.
Hey, folks, I got to jump. I got to catch a flight back home. We'll see y'all next week. Have a great week.
Thanks for coming out, Mark.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Doc.
listen what Kevin's got to say. We had a great meeting, and he'll tell you all about it.
We're looking forward to it, actually.
Well, that should lead us
All right.
right back in. So,
All
Kevin,
right.
get your mic going.
So where did this all start? It started, as always, by consulting too many attorneys. We were asking attorneys how we could ship DNA and plant matter in the mail and all that stuff to do more testing, and came back with some fairly confusing answers that made us think, well, how do we move the testing right to the grow instead of trying to move the material to the testers? And so what we did, let's see if I have one here. We came up with a little way to get about a whole, can you see that? That's the whole punch of a leaf to sit in the tube. And you boil it for a little bit and take a little of that DNA out and put it into another tube that will fit in one of these.
I take it it's a low-level boil.
Yeah, 95 degrees. So this little gizmo will, it's light, it gets to the TSA. They put one up on the space station, but it's basically a USB-driven PCR device where tubes like this.
They put one up on the space station, did you say?
They did. I really don't know what they're doing with it up there, but I think it's more for show.
Interesting.
Other scientists, they're doing
I'm gonna try and do age.
research all the time up there, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think they're trying to look at molecular aging up there on telomeres. There's some suggestion that you may age differently in space, but we'll see.
You got to think that thing probably cost $170,000 US to fly to space.
You know, it's $650. I'm sure the flight ticket was a lot more. And fuel, yeah. So these things are really cheap. Getting them to space, I can't attest to. But
So is it something
what
anyone can buy, any researcher or any individual?
Yeah, they're selling these to high schools. They're selling them to, it's a company called Amplius in Cambridge, Mass. That's got started off of a Kickstarter, and they're now, I think they probably have the whole thing now made in China. But we got these into the cannabis field, and there's like a coupon code. If you get them through our site, you get some kind of discount. But what they allow you to do is to design assays that change color. This is something that we worked on. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that? That's pink.
Yep.
And then that one's yellow. So if there's a target present after about 50 minutes, the sample will turn yellow. And you can take a picture of it with your phone. So in this case, this is a male-female test. So if you want to do male-female detection, it will just change color on you in about 50 minutes. We also built one for this. Plant has a functional CBD allele in it. Now that doesn't discern whether you're going to be a type 3 or type 2 plant. You just know you're not going to be a type 1. So type 1s make all THC. And type 2s and 3s, 2s are 50-50s, and they deviate a little bit from 50-50 sometimes. This test won't discern why at the moment. But and then there's type 3s, which make all CBD. So if you've got a male and it has a CBD allele, some people may not want to huck it out. They may want to maybe breed it, and the intent there is you can get a color test on that. But the other thing we did in the last few months was we were trying all these powdery mildews we targeted that were on other species like grapes and other studied vegetables didn't seem to work or aren't what's on cannabis. So we sequenced the one that's on cannabis and designed a target that will pick up powdery mildew sitting on cannabis as well. Now, powdery mildew is something that vascularizes into the plant, so it remains invisible for a good part of its life cycle until late in flowering and it rears its ugly head. So this is meant to pick it up before it becomes a problem. We're still figuring out whether we've got all the powdery mildews nailed. We sampled 4 locations in New England. There could be another species sitting out somewhere in California or other, high altitude climates.
Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. So
Can I ask you this though, Kevin? A lot of cannabis, obviously it's both environmental and it carries through the tissue. But is there any solutions to it? I mean, we can determine, powdery mildew with our friggin' eyes. I mean, you got a solution instead of a little machine that tells us what we know?
Yeah, so the intent here is to pick it up before you know it's there. So early detection so you can eradicate it. When it sprouts, you'll see spores everywhere, and then it's too late. Then it's all over your garden.
So let's say you're a guy that goes to the club and buys a clone, and you come home and you test it, and it tests positive. It's carrying powdery mildew, like most of the clones available in circulation are. What's your solution?
Kill it. Get another one. Screen it out. I mean, there's powdery mildew resistant lines out there.
This say it in a practical
may help
way,
as a tool to.
Yeah, no, practically speaking, what you're saying doesn't work because, a lot of varieties, like let's say you want to grow sour diesel and you go down and all the clubs you go to, guess what? It's the same cutting of sour diesel moved around and around and around because that's what's happening. So all of them will have it sitting there, waiting to pop out and bloom. And you can't kill them, or then you're not growing that plant. Now you're moving on to a whole other, no more Jack Daniels number 7. Now you're making Seagrams, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. You're saying you're afraid it's going to.
No, I'm saying
that are powdery mildew resistant.
So if you kill the plant, you may not be able to get another sour diesel cutting for the sake of compensation without that in it, because if they are taking the plant and making cuttings of it to sell the cuttings, you got to realize that if it's all sour diesel, they're all having the same problem. If you get what I mean, because it is obviously
so what about
they're late in the genes, waiting for the environmental situation to be perfect, so it can go ping. I'm ruining your life,
Yeah. So can you treat? I'm not as familiar on the treatment side of this. But what about sulfur and these other things that you can do to try?
Well, now that we're so into extracts, we don't want to do those things. I mean, back in the day, we used to use sulfur in vegetation time, and you still can. But if you use sulfur in your flowering garden post week 3, you're going to have the residual of sulfur in your flowers, and it's going to taste and smell like shit. Or
I'm going to say, Todd, like post week 3. You don't want to be burning sulfur in the first week or 2 of flower. I mean,
no, you could though, because there's no flowers.
Still in the room.
No, you know what I'm saying, though, you don't see flowers till week 3.
I would only point out that even when you don't see flowers, there are still glandular trichomes all over the leaves and the stems. And I personally stay away from sulfur. I'm of the Skunk Man Sam school. If I got to get rid of sour diesel, so be it. Get me a haze, get me something that's powdery mildew resistant or that's been bred. Or if you love that sour diesel, maybe breed it out. Exactly.
That's what I did. Breed it out.
You can breed powdery mildew resistant cultivars. You just,
it's time and love. And if you
as soon as you breed, you're already stepped away from what it was that you had. Soon as you enter in genetics from another,
so
hardening the plant.
You're changing the growing.
That's how we got where we are today, Todd. With all the cultivars. So that's even how sour diesel came about and all these things.
But I understand the uniqueness of a plant. You can't replicate something you have. So the way to get rid of it actually would be to take it down to tissue culture, right, Kevin? Because you can actually.
Here we go.
Here's something I did, Todd. My medical strain used to have powdery mildew, and I did this back in January. This is back in 2007, 2008. And I said I hardened the plant. I put it outside in January and protected the roots. So when the roots wouldn't get cold, I put the plant outside, and it was like -2 and stuff like that. I kept doing this for like a month, and for some reason, it just worked. I kind of kept reading and working with that strain. I still have it today. 9, 10 years later, I still grow it. It's growing it right now, and I don't get PM anymore. So I think working with the strain, if you truly love it, and that's just me just playing.
I don't think putting a variety outside.
I'm not saying it's something. I don't know if it worked.
Out of it.
I just said it's something that I did. I'm not saying it's scientific or anything. But I mean, I just kept growing the strain until I was able to start realizing what humidity levels it needed to grow on, what temperatures it grew at, what days it took down. So it took me years to understand that strain until I actually didn't have powdery mildew. Maybe it wasn't me putting it outside, but
well, can I ask Kevin a question then? And the question I have is, Kevin, how does powdery mildew use cannabis as a host when it's not blooming? How does it get into the tissue, and how does it stick through it during veg time?
So in other plants, they've shown that it goes through the stomata and it vascularizes into the epithelial tissue of the plant, and it's an obligate biotroph, meaning it needs the plant to replicate. You can't culture it on a Petri film. We tried that. It's a mess. I don't know to what extent it gets into the seeds. We have a genetic test now, so we can probably. I assumed it would travel in clones because they show wonderful images of these mycelium networks inside the plant that have the DNA of powdery mildew on it through all different types of plants. I'm assuming the same thing's happening in cannabis. I don't know if it's ever going to make it into an embryo, though. A lot of embryos have the capacity to concentrate other types of plant-based insecticides into the embryo to thwart this type of thing off, just as a protection, because the actual coledons to resort to concentration going into the embryo. So when the seed sprouts, the coledons actually have some residual natural pesticides or insecticides with. I don't know what's happening with powdery mildew in that case. That's something we've got to go and look to see if you were to self a plant that had PM, would the seeds come out with it or not?
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting because I love your answer is we don't know, and everybody that's paying attention should do more research on it, because we are learning so much. And as organic cannabis farmers, a lot of the solutions you're mentioning definitely would never be touched by people that are trying to keep things as intact as nature gave it to them.
So what exactly does your test do?
So we pick up DNA of the powdery mildew genome through leaves. It may not even be in bloom stage where you can see the spores. We've seen it in parts of leaves where there's no evidence of powdery mildew on it, but it was a tad PM. We've also sampled neighboring plants in rooms that were loaded with PM, but they seemed resistant or clean, and they don't light up on the test. So is it in the stems? We still don't know. Is it in the roots? We don't know. All we know is that we can get it on. We can clearly get signal when you cannot be used to anybody, but we're also picking it up when it's invisible on the leaf surface, but vascularized.
And
so the
Kevin,
hope is
what if just spores land on a plant? Will that set off your test? So the spores have not penetrated the leaf, but they're laying on the surface from the air.
So it should. I don't know how many is required yet, though. We haven't gone through and done that level of titration. But yeah, it's harder to lyse than what gets vascularized into the cell. But we've sequenced the genome off the spores. So the DNA is there.
What this test would do is, if you were setting up a large-scale cultivation facility, you could test to see if your plants you chose were prone to actually have PM. Because if it's systemic and if it's there, like Kevin's saying, you might want to start with a different plant for your project, because you can see down the road you are going to have a train coming. You know, I mean,
the goal that's
there. It's there.
We don't. Yeah. I'm not suggesting we're picking up the powdery mildew resistance gene. That's a different thing that is worth studying, but we don't know what that is yet. Right now, we can just detect if it's present, which means you can screen the facility to make sure they don't have it and they're not bringing in PM. You can maybe screen just one mother, and clone she's probably clean. So there's a variety of different ways to potentially put it to use.
I think it's awesome. I mean, as people
be able to test for resistance or susceptibility genes, that would be really valuable.
Well, if you look on WikiLeaks on vectors of transmission, it blames woolly aphids and other bugs which are able to penetrate the surface of the plant and then either puke, crap, or whatever in the plant, leaving DNA in the plant might not that make it appear like the spores are submicroscopic? You can't be seen even. So might not that make it look like they were part of the plant DNA, but not really?
You can see them in this case. That white foam you see being a big long stack of spores that are meant to break off.
I've seen them.
Yeah, and you can see them under a microscope too. If you put them in magnification, and you can see them.
Hey, welcome, Chimera.
Have you done any sampling around the country or other areas, like other geographic areas? Because I know you've shown that PM species wasn't one that you had thought it was, that McPartland had proposed it was. So
Right. No, so we haven't. That's what we need to do next is sample Oregon, high altitude, low altitude, everywhere else in the country. Wheat does have 2 different plumarias that infect it. And so, I mean, it's a hexaploid genome. It might be different, but there's reason to believe you can on that as well. Usually, these obligate biotrophs evolve to their host. So it's not surprising that it's different than what we saw on perhaps grapes or other. All of the large crops seem to have their own version of PM that's got a different genus and species to it.
Well, that's why they have Bacillus subtilis or Serenade and things like that that are, applied with stylic oils and grapes, and that's what they've been using as a deterrent for white powdery mildew, because it'll go dormant once the white powdery mildew goes by. But if the white powdery mildew comes back, they go back and just hit it with the stylic, and supposedly reactivates the Bacillus subtilis, which eats the white powdery mildew. So you're basically
the Netherlands flower growers were using UVB. They would just walk amongst their plants and not even hold it on it for more than a minute or anything, once a week, and it completely suppressed it.
I have one of those lights, the UVB lights.
No, it's not UVB. It was UVC.
Yeah, I think it might have been UVC. I think that's correct.
Yeah, the idea behind those is they damage the DNA, so it effectively kills the organism.
I've seen the bacillus stuff to work well as well, but come through on your microbial tests, and PM won't. PM doesn't grow on agar, so you're kind of adding in completely harmless, but it's probably going to trigger a microbial test later.
There's also other pests that are called false mildew.
There's also ways of being able to control the environment and really don't get powdery mildew. I mean, that's probably the hardest thing, right? People can't control their rooms, and that's why powdery mildew is so hard to fight.
Well, a combination of environment and resistant varieties is the key.
Well, and ideally, don't have a giant grapevine that's literally covered in powdery mildew for like 4 months of the year, over top of a walkthrough that you have to go to get to your grow, Johnny B.
Or the
Yeah, well, what Kevin's saying, and it is such actually host-specific pathogen, and that actually wouldn't be true, would it? Right, because theoretically it would be a different powdery mildew that attacks the grapevine than attacks cannabis.
You constantly hear from people that they have high sources of mildew surrounding their grow, and that's where they're getting it from. But you don't know if that's actually being caused by that, or if it's merely a coincidence, and they have extremely susceptible varieties and a bad environment, and it expresses.
Yeah, but I mean, it's something to look at for sure.
Yeah, well,
it could be in there are no grapevines in our neck of the woods. We're not really. That may be why we didn't find Golovinomyces here.
Maybe that's why you don't see it in Afghanistan, powdery mildew, because they don't grow very much grapes to make wine in Afghanistan.
Fine, I'll work on getting rid of the wine grape thing in the back.
I like your grapevine. Don't get me wrong, but I've
I love it. It's been there since like 1960.
When I saw it covered in powdery mildew, like I couldn't believe that you had to walk under that to get to your grow room, and you have this beautiful grow room that you spent so much time and energy, and you have to walk through a powdery mildew grapevine, like literally 10 feet. The most powdery mildew I've ever seen. Well, I love the grapevine. Don't get me wrong, and I love the.
That's pretty funny. Let's put a pollution filter right in front of my front door.
Fine, I'm putting in a tunnel.
Johnny, fight back with them, Johnny. Tell them you put that grapevine there so you'd have a way to test all the different mildew controls.
You know what? It's there so I can understand and educate you guys
where it got cured
on what not to do.
Well, when I would
that really comes down to with powdery mildew, controlling that environment is really key, because when we don't have a controlled environment, we're able to see that powdery mildew flourish very quickly. If the humidity gets too high and you're not doing things properly, it's an easy thing to grow. A lot of people get powdery mildew because they don't know how to control.
But also realize where your air intake comes from. I've consulted with people and found them with a rose bush outside, because rose bushes tend to be susceptible to white powdery mildew as well as other plants.
I'm a firm believer in sealed rooms.
But a thing I learned is mint and spearmint and peppermints are good things to plant around your air intakes, because those are not susceptible to white powdery mildew.
Mm.
Yeah, well, under the Canadian system, you can only use a couple of things for powdery mildew. So I think,
Can you use UVC?
Yeah, that's not regulated as a.
That's what I was thinking.
It's not a but it's a lot of, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, that it is if you have a very large grow.
Yeah.
What is the hazards of using UVC in an indoor or a grow greenhouse?
Are completely clothed, and they wear UVC goggles too.
Yeah, my stuff comes with.
They were doing it
goggles, and you have to cover all your skins.
Yeah, I think there's probably more effective things to do, like even that, like where you were calling it stylitic oil, HN. Do you mean stylet oil?
Yeah, it's a very fine oil, right? That they would apply with the Bacillus subtilis. That's what they were doing industrially, because I was looking at Serenade, and you could not get Serenade but on industrial levels from the actual grape producers. Because I was seeing it, they had white powdery mildew, and so I actually went and talked to a couple of the vintners and asked them about it, and that's what they told me that they were utilizing, was that Serenade was the most effective, and because hitting it with the oil, it attacked the white powdery mildew until it was gone, and then it went dormant, and then if the white powdery mildew came back, they just would go back and hit it with the oil, and it would reactivate the bacteria to eat the other bacteria. So it's biological.
I would question that was the method of action, but that stylet oil is pretty incredible stuff.
And is it safe to use during flowering or just veg?
Well, it's a petroleum byproduct. It's white paraffin oil. It's a
then. Well, that would rinse right off into your extract.
It'd be nice if we had Scaldone here. I have some. I'm gonna have it sent into the lab.
Yeah, I've never used it. It's one of the few organic, natural controls that I have zero experience with.
Yeah, I would know.
There's organic versions. They're not organic versions, but if it comes off petroleum distillate, like it's a byproduct of oil, I don't know how organic it is. But I think in the Canadian system, the equivalent product is that veg oil they're using. It's like it's just a canola-based vegetable oil that they're spraying on the plants, and I think that has like a suffocating effect on the powdery mildew. Not only on the spores, but the fruiting bodies. I mean, it really does wipe it out in veg plants. It's quite impressive. But, having the conversation about it, I think we should also say that it was being used heavily in a regulated market in Colorado, and then it was pulled off. It was put on the ban list. So whether that was just because it hadn't gone through a registration process and testing for that crop, that could be, but they also might have had another reason for it.
Also, too, everybody needs to remember, before the introduction of wide leaf drug varieties, what are commonly called indicas, there was little to no powdery mildew. You didn't see it from the Mexican, Colombian, Thai plants. And it's still rare amongst tropical or equatorial varieties, because if they do naturally mildew, then they have a significant less chance of survival. Whereas in Afghanistan, they don't need resistance, so they don't have it so much.
I think I have some preliminary info on it, and I think there's specific secondary metabolites in the plant that.
Yep, that could also be true.
You're way more likely to get powdery mildew, and if they're not in there, then there's probably other genetic markers too of something else inside the plant that.
But that could become a marker that you could look for, that you could to weed out or find what you were looking for.
Unless you like it,
you can.
Right.
It causes other changes to flavor. So if it might be, at least the one that I'm looking at, that you can only have. The terpene profile will essentially be regulated by your powdery mildew resistance will be regulated by the terpene profile. So you might have a terpene profile that is resistant, but like, for example, I can't make it into OG.
Even if it's not 100% that way, it could certainly be a significant reason why it's this way. In other words, why some plants are more susceptible than not. Because they do produce particular compounds which make it possible.
But can I ask a question then? Can you also take a plant that would test positive using Kevin's test, for instance, but then create an environment where the PM really can't bloom?
Yeah, sure. If you have high enough light levels, high enough temperatures, and dry, things like that, and good airflow, makes it really hard for PM to express itself. Can
I ask you guys this, if anyone knows anything about this? Because I was hanging out with this guy, Eric, from Forever Flowering Greenhouses, and he's a fantastic source of information. I should ask him to come on, actually, now that I think about it. But he was saying that a lot of the greenhouse panels that were made blocked UV, and a lot of the growers that were using them were having problems with powdery mildew. And the same exact genetic, same exact plant could be outside of the greenhouse, under the sun, and not getting PM, but the plant that's 10 feet in behind the wall is getting PM, and he felt that the lack of UV was one of the reasons why the plants, the sun wasn't acting as this natural disinfectant when it was being blocked by our, ingenious scientific solar
A lot
panels.
of the newer Dutch greenhouses are built with UV transmittent plastic rather than glass, which stops almost all UV. And what they found, it also improves terpenes and flavors and smells on like berries and fruit.
Okay, so then I have a right to be confused, because like everyone else, when I saw that it said blocks UV, it was supposed to be good. Sunglasses, greenhouses, but now we're learning that the UV, at least in the plants,
greenhouses were traditionally made out of glass, Todd, and glass stops UV.
You also got to look at when PM also occurs. It's normally in the fall when temperatures are changing and humidity levels are changing, like in your grow room. That's always the last week or two of flower where people come down with the problems where they can't fight it, so they can't get down early. I work at a grow store, so I hear this all the time. Growers come in and, I got 7 days left. I'm starting to get PM. What do I do? So I mean, like Sam was saying, I mean, it's a mode environment. I mean, that's pretty much all you can try and do at that point. Spraying anything on your plant in the last week of flower is completely ridiculous. You're just kind of destroying your medicine right away. So, I mean, what stages and what can people do? I mean, can you trim it out? I know people talking in chat about high alkaline water, spraying it with high alkaline.
I've also heard of keeping your room below 35% humidity as well, if possible.
If you look at the flower industry,
somebody from Quest DHU about this. If you keep your humidity below 35 and your temperature, it's like going outside in the fall and you breathe, the humidity can't dissipate, so it sticks on the plant. So don't go below 39 or 38% humidity. The guy told me from Quest DHU, I had a really good chat to him about this. So do not go that low humidity. I was causing PM. That's what I really realized. I was dropping it down to 30% humidity and dropping my temperatures down. So this is one thing I was trying to understand. I mean, does anybody else kind of like confirm? And this is what they told me from Quest Dehumidifiers, the owners down there. He talked me really about RH, relative humidity in the air and temperature. Like you said, in the fall, you breathe, it falls, it sticks on the plant. It's not.
Hey, John,
Yeah?
sorry to interrupt. Do you have music playing? Can you please turn it off? Because if it's copyrighted music, I'm not going to be able to post this on YouTube. So just specifically don't listen to music when you're on Hash Church, everyone. Obviously, it's quick. I think it happened to Sub Cool recently, and it was funny because he had Mendo Dope, the band, his buddies from Humboldt, and they came on and they played one of their songs, and I guess their songs are copyrighted, and it shut his video down from it. So
how's that? I apologize. Someone turned up the radio.
I can hear the radio, so if they just turn it off, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives us feedback.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I can deal with the sound of it. It's the copyright infringement that I'm more worried about, because the Hash Church episode will get flagged. And so we got to make sure we keep that down. Sorry about that, to cut you off there, Johnny B, but we got to know that we can't have radios playing in the background of Hash Church.
Kevin, I wondered if you can tell us a little bit more about the sequencing of the PM variety. How did you do it? Did you take it off of plants, or did you actually isolate it spores and then sequence the spores?
So we screwed it up several times. The first time we did it, we did a hole punch, and we ended up with more cannabis DNA than powdery mildew. Then we tried to print it onto a Petri film and see if it would grab root, and it didn't. We grew other things, and we sequenced those genomes by mistake. Then we came up with a method of just getting the spores off the surface by like putting the leaf in water and ripping it off quickly, and then centrifuging those spores and then sequencing those spores. So it's not a clean genome. When you read about these things, they're usually about 160 million bases in size and 90% repetitive. So it doesn't assemble beautifully, but we get enough fragments of DNA on the genome to be able to target a few PCR assays for it that look unique.
Can I suggest something, Kevin?
Yeah, sure.
An old school way of getting cleaning up buds were to take hydrogen peroxide in a bath of water and just putting the buds in and letting them soak. And when you would do that, you
would like 0.3% or something of hydrogen peroxide,
right? And you would get this film on the top of the water, and it would look like it was rinsing off the PM. So everything at the top, I mean, you're only using hydrogen peroxide, and you know what that is. So if all that's left is water and hydrogen peroxide, what would you have other than the PM? Because that's what that white film is, I assume.
So it might. I have to check if hydrogen peroxide will crack the spores. It probably won't, but it might. So the reason we like having the spores is they do tend to float on the surface, and you can spin them down. So when you get them off, you can get them concentrated, so you can get enough DNA. If you strip it off and you melt those spores, the DNA will kind of be in the entire solution, and then you've got to capture the DNA out of a bigger volume. But it might work. I haven't actually played with that. Most of the spore collection we did was remote, so we kind of had to MacGyver something in someone's grow to get the spores home. But as best we can tell, spores can go in the mail. They don't carry anything detectable. It's a cannabinoid on them.
And the film that you might be spotting is drugstore hydrogen peroxide is far from pure. It's nowhere near it. Has other stuff in it.
Oh yeah. Well, that could contaminate the sequencing. There's other bugs present there.
Well, I was talking to Rosenthal one day here in the Bay. We have it really bad, and he was saying that a crop was moved into the South Bay area, and I'm not sure which one it was. But once that was introduced to the area, a lot of the farmers in this whole, because we're in a valley, if you will, between two mountain sets, and he basically said that it being in the atmosphere contaminated the area where it didn't have otherwise powdery mildew before. Once that crop was introduced to the area, it did.
Yeah, so some questions are, how long is it in the plant undetectable? Does it sit dormant from the clone all the way to its mature growth?
I suspect it is. I would have plants and I would grow them over the winter in the ground. So they got 10 whatever feet tall and even taller. And every winter when the light levels were low, the temperatures were low, I would see certain plants would get mildew. And then as soon as the light levels raised and the temperatures were better, and I made new clones from it, the new clones that I was making had to have had mildew inside of it. And it didn't express it at all until real late in the season again. And these plants were veg. they were not flowering, because normally you see mildew gets worse and worse and worse as the plant flowers, which makes it all that much more difficult to control also.
In my weird experience, though, you could take the same cutting and putting it in two different environments, and in one environment it will, and then in the other environment it won't show PM. And so I've always thought that a lot of it was environmentally, it was just environmentally sensitive. And I've always assumed that all the varieties of cuttings that are in general population are inherently have it, because all it needs to do in the mother plant is pick it up. Then I got to ask you this, in a sense, Sam or Kevin, or can you outgrow it? Can I take a mother plant that's growing rapidly, and will her cuttings not have that in it? Will it only be found in older parts of the plant?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. We now have the tools to look, but
I don't know. I've been using my strain for a long time, and it had powdery mildew back in 2007, 2008. I'm growing it in 2018, and it's doing fine. So, and I'm working 4 clones off of that mother plant now, 5 actually. So I've taken 5 cuts from that plant since from seed when it first initially had PM. So, I mean, I can say that I think with proper understanding of the plant, me personally, and understanding how to grow that plant, its temperatures and humidity levels, I've actually come to a point now where I'm not concerned about getting PM anymore. I don't spray my plants at all.
Right, but John, aside from like that, in a sense, you can, if I'm correct, Sam, you can actually outpace a disease in a plant and take cuttings from the top of the plant and not.
Yeah, if you're taking tiny meristem cuttings, micro meristem cuttings, you can outgrow even viral diseases if it's done properly.
Okay, so then my question would be, is we don't know, obviously this is a whole thing of uncertainty. We don't know how fast this virus can creep up the plant, and how much that virus is not a virus. Or the powdery mildew. Well, how is it? It's like
it's a large fungus.
Stowaway in our airplane that we want to kick out, right? I mean, whatever metaphor you'd like to use, it's an alien in my cannabis plant, right? And it's systemic. So my question is, Kevin, does it grow up the stem and just stay at the tip of the plant, or is it lagging behind? Then we would only have to make cuttings, throw away the mothers, the hosts, and then the cuttings would not be as prone to. And that's what I think might have happened with you, John. You may have been cutting and cut beyond the point that actually had it.
And that's probably what happened. As I'm listening to Sam talk, when you guys are talking about, I know how I worked with this plant, and I remember taking that couple cuts at the top or something like that there back in 2009. This is when I put it outside, when I put that main mother outside in January, because I didn't want to lose it. It was my medicine. It helped me so much, just like the Haley's Comet. These are 2 strains that work so well for me. So it was kind of like, what can I do? And I was just trying and learning and have no idea. And
it might have helped you, John, but as far as I know, it doesn't transmit itself systemically through the plant. It is spores hit it, it becomes infected. It's not always expressing itself fully. It might be inside the plant, but it's not systemically spreading. Is that correct, Kevin?
Kind of like cancer.
So the papers I've seen, I'm going to try and dig one up and put them in the chat. I have them linked on our medicinal genomics site, but the papers I've seen about it suggest it infects through the stomata, which are like the holes in the leaves that the plant breathes through. And it gets in from the leaves and then vascularizes through the leaves. So it may get to the stems and the roots last, is my guess. But again, very little of this has been studied in actual cannabis. Everything we're looking at is, making assumptions from one plant into this one.
Well, can I say something that's crazy then, Sam? What do you think of this? Because I've gotten varieties that have had PM in my first run of getting the cuttings, and then the way that I take care of my mother plants, I end up not getting PM in the same cuttings later on. And now I'm thinking it's just in the way that they're growing, because if the mother plants are growing really fast.
Probably a combination. Is the plant susceptible, and what are the growing conditions?
Right. I think a healthy garden might be the cure to many of the diseases, because unless the diseases are growing rapidly with the cannabis plant, if we kept our mother plants healthy and we kept our cuttings coming up we could outpace a lot of we could correct problems that are otherwise in the cuttings that we purchase at the local dispensary.
So when I had PM in 2008 with the plant, I had one little room. It was shiddly growing, no real venting, nothing, moving around, garages, stuff like that, to where now I have a proper facility that I've worked on because it's my medicine. I'm licensed for it. And I have the proper, like I said, environment control in order to make sure I don't get powdery mildew. And that's one thing it's the environment control is really key, and the understanding of when to take cuts, like you said, and what Sam was saying. There's all these great things we've all learned about.
If Kevin was to analyze roots separately from stems, separately from leaves, I wouldn't be surprised if powdery mildew is not systemic down to the roots. Is it found in the roots?
We haven't checked, and that's a really good idea. We should go do that. Yeah, we need to go and look at that. We've often just gone to other grows and tried to harvest spores, but never got in there saying, give us your root, man.
Well, then, the other thing is, Kevin, I'm wondering if it can be picked up, because we a lot, now that there's such a big demand for soil, from the 90s to present, it seems like this quality of soil that we could buy as a gardener has gone down. And to me, it's because demand has gone up. And I just wonder if there can be things present that once the plant gets roots, could well be picking up the PM from the areas that have it, because a lot of the soils we use are coming from Northern California.
I'll send you a piece of my grapevine roots. I'll dig it out for you. It's got PM. We all know that. Mark's talked about it for years. I'll send you it. Please. Maybe we can figure that out. I know it's got PM.
Right. We'll check the DNA on that. I think that's the next step.
Give me an address. And I can legally send a great root to you, so it's like even better. So you know what? This is a good little thing. So definitely dig up some root from the backyard. Great, send it to you.
As long as your DHL package doesn't go through Saudi Arabia.
Huh. Seriously, I've been quiet because I'm looking through my macro photographs, trying to find a really good macro photograph of powdery mildew. And let me tell you, if I find it, it is some nasty looking shit. It's just like, ugh.
Dude, if you look in last September, I think you were taking pictures. Yeah, I remember we looking at that. So look at the September, around September when you're looking at it. It might be the year before, because I know yours is dated by months.
I've seen entire plants 6-7 feet tall, so covered with white powdery mildew on all the leaves, all the stems. It never really made it to all the flowers because I killed the damn thing.
Oh shit. Yeah, that's pretty much what you do. That's like, ooh, how do you even get rid of such a thing? My God,
you get a plastic bag and you place it on top of it, and you try to cut it in such a manner that little or no spores can fall out.
Wow.
Yeah. Basically no spores, but
that sounds like a good trick.
I've had plants in my room that had PM, and I've really just put a bag right over top of the whole bag, cut it, and then take it out that way, just because that one plant in the corner had PM.
Yeah, that's right.
I put a link.
As a cannabis breeder, your favorite thing to do is to kill cannabis plants that are not what you want.
They always show themselves quite early too. So
I threw a link up there on the screen. Hopefully it's screen sharing. Let me see. Is that going? There you go.
We can see it.
You can see it.
That's a stain of the network that it makes inside the leaf structure. Wow. So these little conidiospores land on the cell, somehow leak into the stomata, and start growing a network inside the leaves. And there's a link to a paper that kind of walks through all this.
And when it's fruiting on top of the leaf, it's coming from that network, like a mycelium type process.
Yes, yeah. At the last stage, you'll see it starts to bridge these little towers of like chained up conidiospores, which then spread to other plants.
If one spore lands on a plant, how big can it spread?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question as to how many spores it takes to infect and how many we can actually detect. I think when the network gets this big, it's easy to pick up. We pick it up quite readily because there's a lot of DNA in a network like that. But we've not looked in the roots or in the stems. It may not get that far.
And I'm wondering if one spore lands, how big of a network can it build inside the leaf? Just one single spore.
You know, it says on WikiLeaks, or it says on the wiki about this particular stuff that it most likely and almost always appears on the bottom leaves first. So
but once you see it, it's already too late. It's well infected by the time you see the spores.
So well, we don't know. We don't know how far up the plant it goes, and if that's the case, what Indra's saying is true. It could well be coming in from the organic stuff we're using. It could be a host in our soil. Because I will be honest, I got it less when I used all Rockwell.
So Kevin, is it
bottom
possible
leaves are also shaded more?
Is it possible then to test on different parts of the leaves and have white powdery mildew in one area but not in the other? And that's a problem with the test if it only shows up on the lower and you test a higher end and it's actually on the lower? Or would it show systemically throughout the entire plant once infected?
We've not done enough sampling to nail that, but we do when we do a hole punch. Let me see if I can find one of these things. When we do a hole punch, it goes right through the whole leaf. So we survey DNA from both the top and the bottom of the plant. This is what one of these things looks like. It has a little.
So you asked for that representative sample of a top and a bottom leaf.
Yeah, it goes right through the whole leaf, and it gets a 4 millimeter biopsy that you can then punch into a well like this once you get it. And so there's a remaining question as to how frequently do you have to sample to 100% pick it up in every plant? That's a good question. We've just been punching. We've seen powdery mildew on the plant. We've punched where it's visible, and then we've also punched other leaves on the plant. We can pick it up in the other leaves. So there's more to be done to know whether I'm sure there's a gradation of that response, right? If it's an early infection, maybe it's only on that one branch and hasn't made it to every other branch on the plant. And maybe it's just contained there. We don't know.
But am I correct in saying that it's then anecdotal that 35% humidity and below will stave off that type of problem? So that's just hearsay and conjecture currently. There's no science.
I think there's no. I've read that places as well, but I think what Chimera was saying is important, that certain chemotypes might have a different tolerance window. Right? They may be, if they're putting out terpinolene or something else that this thing doesn't like, maybe that makes it so it's more tolerant to wetter conditions or different environments.
Well, we had this problem heavily in the Bay Area because, again, we have more microclimates here in the Bay Area than almost anywhere in the world. And so we asked the ICRS because we were finding in certain gardens that there were certain plants that were susceptible that had white powdery mildew. And in the same garden, there were plants that didn't have it. So we knew that there were definitely natural biological plants. And I think you recall, Sam, when we asked, that was the response, was that it tended to be those that were equatorial seemed to have the natural biological resistance, whereas those from the
I've grown hundreds of different populations from hundreds of different countries, and absolutely this is true. I've even had equatorial plants completely surrounded by dozens of indica plants that had pretty much every one of them powdery mildew to some degree. And the one in the middle got nothing.
Well, listen, isn't this powdery mildew operates by the same modus operandi that all fungi does? And it's a systemic thing only in that it can, how much of the plant it can reach through the system subsurface and the leaves, and how many spores it can generate to allow to on leaves up above it. So that's why it grows from the bottom, or that's why it's most often seen from the bottom. But since it's operating under the same modus operandi as most fungi, then it seems clear that stress, either too high or too low, is going to make this thing kick in and start expressing itself. So there must be a medium line somewhere where it won't cause it to express, or where spores won't germinate as readily, because
that of course would help, Indra. But what you really want is varieties that just don't ever get it, no matter what the fuck you do to them.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, but is that possible when it's such an environmentally prevalent problem in some areas? I mean, some areas you could grow it and never see it. I mean, Southern California.
Absolutely, it is possible. If you think about it, powdery mildew was not a problem in cannabis in California until after the introduction of wide leaf drug varieties. Before that, it was little or unknown.
I want to say this though, but what if you want the effects of those wide leaf drug varieties? And you know, this is one of the hurdles you have to overcome, right? Say that again.
I said, groove with your mildew, brother.
Well, there has to be a solution, is what I'm saying. I mean, you know, a lot of people like their thick Afghans and their heavy indicas. I like OG Kush, even though it has a tendency to want to get PM. I mean, and I would like to see plants be able to either be able to outgrow the disease because you thoughtfully know what you're doing, and unfortunately science doesn't. And as much as I love you coming on and talking about this test, it shows us we know shit about this. We don't know if it's in the roots. We don't know if it's at the tip. We might think it's in the middle. It's probably in the middle, for sure in the middle. But we don't really know. Is it on this part? No, we don't know. And it really shows we are such infants in this conversation. And we really need to learn so much about what it is that's going on.
I bet you if we would ask the grape growers and some of the other industries that have rose growers, I bet you anything, they already know the answers. We just don't with cannabis.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much on point with that.
Well, let's make some wine friends.
Well, once again, if you look on Wiki, you'll find out that there's about 40 or 50 different kinds of powdery mildew, and many of them are systemic to various plants that they grow on. And when I looked on the Wiki thing, I didn't see the particular one that's systemic to pot, but I did see about 65 or 70 other powdery mildew.
Skunk cabbage gets powdery mildew. I remember that as a kid in the valleys growing up in Anwar. The skunk cabbage had big powdery mildew on it at the end, like September, October.
Hey, Sam.
Yes?
Is it possible to get Rob's co-author of Cannabis on the show? He's only, botany teacher at University of Hawaii. I think he might be a good source
I have no idea. Rob would know much better than me.
So their book does point out two other species that might be on cannabis. One's named L. torica, one's named P. macularis. And we did design assays looking for those and just didn't see them in the New England ones. They could be in Amsterdam. They could be in other places. So yeah, I don't think it's settled as to whether it's one species or two.
And what does Dr. McPartland say on the subject?
He was, I thought, authored on that same paper, but I haven't heard from him lately as to what else it might be. The weird thing is, if you get a powdery mildew encyclopedia, they do exist. Every single artistic rendering of powdery mildew from species to species visually looks the same. But from a DNA standpoint, they're different. And it's kind of like, butterflies and
you see powdery mildew much more, but I occasionally have seen downy mildew on cannabis also.
Yeah, and that's probably another beast altogether. So
yeah, absolutely.
The visual looks are hard to run off of with genetics. It's we've seen it in other species. There's just different life cycles of certain species where you can't. It's hard for you to ID them visually. You have to really go down to their the sequencing to distinguish them.
Caught me with my pants down. I was just about to load a dab, and then I'm like trying to unmute the mic. I'm like, oh no, I don't want Cuban to cringe.
I was
Googling. Silence in the.
I was Googling powdery mildew encyclopedia for everybody, actually.
No, we only want to know about the ones that affect us. We don't care about all the other powdery mildews, do we?
Well, if it affects us, yes, but no, as long as it doesn't touch our cannabis.
We need to isolate the ones because it definitely tends to be prevalent from San Diego all the way to Vancouver. So these spores are everywhere. I know that we're breathing them currently. They're kind of endemic throughout the entire West Coast currently that I'm aware of, but I've also seen it creep up in Colorado and other parts.
They always were, but like it said, how many different species are there? Hundreds? So just to say mildew is constantly in the environment or air or anything is meaningless, because we only care about 2 or 3 species as far as I know.
And have we isolated what those are? I mean, we have those ones from the McPartland and Rob's book, but I mean, we don't know if there are others out there that and what those are until we actually have representative samples all the way across, correct?
I think it's likely we do know, because researchers around the world have been identifying this on industrial hemp for years. All the reports out of Italy, Russia, France, all the really big China, the big hemp producers, they had problems and they described them, they identified them, and they're pretty well known.
And I mean, correct, the biggest problem, of course, besides the spore, is that it actually covers the plant so that they cannot have the actual natural transpiration happen on the plant. It smothers the plant.
If it gets bad enough, yes. And like was mentioned earlier, it can be spread by flying insects.
As in on their legs, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
So one thing that would help for those out there listening is if you have powdery mildew resistant strains, we should be sequencing 100 strains that are resistant and 100 that aren't. And then we can zero in on the loci that might be the genetic predictor of resistance. And then that makes it much easier to breed. You can start breeding a little bit more intelligently if you know what you're trying to cross.
So how and where would we start that type of, i.e., not only discussion, but people want to say, there's thousands of people who are watching this show right now, you know, or will watch this over the coming week. You know, what can they do to actually do that? Do they actually?
Yeah, I can give you an example. Let's say you've got either a greenhouse or under lights operation where you constantly have mildew problems. That's the perfect laboratory. Yet there's one variety clone which, no matter what you've done to it, no matter how horrible you've treated it, it's never expressed mildew ever. That's a good one for the other one. The other one is every time you grow it, it tries to do mildew, and you have to be perfect to avoid it. And as many of those 2 populations as you can get would answer Kevin's requirement.
Yeah, so we've got protocols we're putting together to help people get us spores from these things, so we don't have to put anything in the mail, and we can at least survey if there's other species out there, and then we've got methods for people to actually get DNA to us. So they have just a hole punch of the plant. We can get the whole genome off the hole punch of a plant, and if we get DNA from that, we should be able to do whole genome shotguns and screen these things for markers that might be resistant or non-resistant.
And so people understand. They're not going to be able to resurrect your variety from this hole punch and the DNA that they look at. They're not going to be able to create an exact copy of it from some box or machine that creates DNA sequences. That's not what's happening. All they're trying to do is to see what are the commonalities and the differences between the resistant and the susceptible PM varieties.
Yeah, and we're happy to sign any confidentiality if folks need that. Whether you want a private or public, we'll accommodate either.
I mean, it's an incredible database that's definitely going to be needed because people will want that. I mean, including people like myself who are distributors.
Everybody wants it.
Yeah, everybody wants it. Everybody wants access to
I guarantee you that the big flower growers in the Netherlands and other countries, they don't use varieties which are super mildew susceptible, and they have to constantly spray, especially if they're organic growers. They can't. So what they do is they gravitate towards varieties which are more resistant.
And every marker we can eventually zero in on that predicts something about the plant, we can distill it back into something a little field-based detection device can find. So if we find the marker for powdery mildew resistance, that could just as readily be one of those yellow pink assays for male versus female. We're just looking for the presence of a particular DNA marker, and it'll turn yellow if it's there or not. So there's
there will be resistance, and there'll be other things too. As Chimera was talking about, very likely certain phenotypes of cannabis are more resistant and more resistant, or more susceptible, excuse me.
Well, and that's a key advertising I could see for seed companies into when they get to breeding and starting to create these. And, white mildew resistant strains I could see being very attractive to the consumer as well as to them as well.
They already sell them for melons and strawberries. And I'm trying to think of the other crops that have a lot.
I've seen those that have actually said so. So to actually see cannabis ones, it would be the next step for us in cannabis.
I guess it's time for a bong rip.
I feel that. It's been an interesting conversation. We got 700 people watching live and quite a few people in the chat talking about the conversation. PM resistant would be a good marketing claim, Real Rasher. And I'm definitely still, for now, I also agree with Todd. We have a lot to learn. And that's why I sit in the school of Skunkman Sam of grow PM resistant cultivars. While everyone's learning, they can learn with their PM. I just don't want PM. I fucking hate PM. I just kill my crop if I get PM. I'm like, goodbye, whole crop. See you later. I don't like it. That shit is.
And have you seen varieties that have never, ever gotten PM, even though it's been grown many, many times under many different conditions?
I've seen the narrow leaf drug cultivars, the tallest plant in the room, be near plants that have not only mildew, but also the little thrips, and not have either of it. Years ago, but still, it surprised me. It always made me think, wow, these really are different. There's something different about these, and it's just not the 18 weeks of flower versus the 8 weeks of flower. There's other things going on as well. I don't know if it's unique terpene expressions, because we know that that's happening, and we know that, in theory, there are theories that say the terpenes are, potentially, while simultaneously repelling certain insects and animals, potentially also attracting humans. I mean, they attract me. I can't deny it.
I got to run, folks. I got people arriving here for a little holiday event. But anyway, my email is on the chat if anyone wants to continue PM discussions. Thanks for the time, Marcus.
So
Absolutely,
Sam.
I'll send you some roots.
Sam, you've grown mass varieties of these. Thanks a lot, Kevin, for coming by. You've grown a lot of these varieties. So what are strains or varietals that are out there that people can look for that are mildew resistant?
The least mildew susceptible plants are equatorial, tropical, narrow leaf drug varieties. Strongly in that direction. The more north you go, and also the more like in Afghanistan, where you've got really wide leaf ones, so they're really bred for hashish production and resin production. Those ones are grown under conditions where they don't need mildew resistance because it's not commonly found there.
It's cold and dry, right?
Which is kind of a red flag for almost a guarantee that if you take that cultivar out of that environment and put it in one that, say, has high humidity and mildew and molds.
I've grown thousands of Afghan seeds, and let me tell you, the vast majority of them are susceptible to mildew to some degree. Especially when you're not trying to control the conditions, because you don't want a baby, you want to put a healthy plant that can resist the Borg.
I did one grow where we actually had on one side of the room, you could run right down the middle. This side had PM, this side didn't. One side was one we called Isaac, and it was more of an indica-based variety. And the other side was more of a sativa-based. It was a narrow leaf. It was a grapefruit type cross. This was years ago, but I'll never forget that. You can almost draw a line down the room. This side had PM, this side didn't. So strain is really a key.
I've seen PM not only on the leaves, but completely covering all the stems also.
Yeah, I have too.
But it sounds like you guys have cultivated a fair amount of PM in your careers.
Yeah. We're professionals.
Oh man, dude. I'm
Well, I
telling
used to
you.
consult in gardens, and you go in gardens and you can walk right in, and I've walked into spider mite factories. I've walked into, I've seen some ugly shit that you thought you
Spider
would
mite
only see in books, but you're like, holy shit, did you not read a
The
book?
worst nightmares I've seen were botrytis on every plant.
Terrible.
Gads.
Terrible. Hurts the soul, really.
I've seen cobwebs going from plants to plants.
The other problem here in the Bay was having, colas that grow so dense that you grow and you harvest them, and then when you crack them open, they're cored with, mildew because it's just can't breathe inside there. It's so dense.
Or even black mold, just like the plant deteriorating and eating itself from the inside out. That's
We used to see that a bit with people. They would have caterpillars, and you couldn't really hardly see the damage from the outside until it started to change colors. But they would go in a circle right up the thing and leave behind caterpillar shit.
In the Central Valley, people have been having over the past couple of years, the sudden oak death has caused problems, which is causes the mealiness to the stalk, which causes no transpiration. No transfer from the roots up into the upper part of the plant. I've heard of multiple gardens in the Central Valley just full collapsing from that.
What was actually causing them to collapse?
It's a sudden oak death. It's a problem that they have. Yeah, with oak trees here in California, it's spread over to cannabis.
I've seen moths that laid caterpillars' eggs, and then the caterpillars would dig a hole inside of the stem, and they would live inside there, and then the branch would break and fall over.
I have the ones when I grew in Southern California. There was a type of moth where, it actually lands on the lower part of the plant.
I think it might have been the army worm, or I forget.
It gets right and it hugs right close to the stem. And I was sitting there watching. It was a Jack Rare plant, and I watched this bud shake, and I'm like, "Why is my bud shaking?" And all of a sudden, pop! Out's the caterpillar. It had literally cored all up the base of the plant and just went all the way up the top.
Yeah, if you cut below where they are and throw that away, the rest of the plant depends how early, will recover and keep pumping.
I learned that the hard way.
But you learned, and that was the best part.
Well, that's the thing about plants, and that's what I started to learn from a bonsai teacher who was 90-something years old, and he said, "You're not going to learn anything until you kill your first 100 plants. And it'll take you 7 years to master each tree." And I was like, And it made a lot of sense because, you have to not only take care of it when it's you have to learn when it's...
I've been hired by the bonsai plants themselves, and they want to set themselves free from their masters, and they've paid me big bucks to do so.
I thought they had a short attention span. Sorry, bonsai joke.
Hey, what about duds, stem nematodes, fusarium? What do we know? Who wants to hear
against what?
Do you know about the stem nematodes, fusarium?
Absolutely, but what you're doing is using beneficial nematodes against different organisms that might be in the stem. I don't think there's stem nematodes.
Can things like thrips cause powdery mildew to?
Yes.
And how does that explain how that happens?
Well, wouldn't it be because of the procurement burn when they actually put their procurements on the insect goes into the cell, it opens it up and it actually leaves an open wound, so it would be an easy access.
I've seen photographs of white flies, thrips. What's the thing you just said?
The procurement, most insects, that's how they actually pierce the cell.
Well, I've seen many pests with close-up photographs that carried various spores and organisms from plant to plant is the bottom line. If you really you want to get rid of pests.
Use pests.
So you need to use pests to get rid of pests?
I don't know. You know what? I'm
That's
using
called
nematode to have some
beneficials,
thrips.
not pests.
Beneficials.
Correct.
I'm using beneficials. That's what I'm using. Beneficials now. And it's worked well. You know?
But more so,
in the middle of finishing.
I mean, you know, I think that now that we're getting into this whole situation where we're really, everything is being analyzed, we want sterile gardens. You know, I don't think I'm alone in saying that we don't want bug poop on our plants or in our flowers or in our extracts, even if it was beneficial bug poop.
Well, you know what, Todd? It's exactly why the lab that was built for the Prana and the Blue River and the Bubble Man brand that Tony built down in California, it's why we went to the level that we went with all of the different water filtration, to the special ice machine, to the walk-in frostless freezers, to the antimicrobial VOC, anti-fucking everything. Like he built an incredible facility there, and it's all because we want to make sure that everything is sterile. We want to make sure that we can clean everything with steam, not chemical solvents. So
Who's got the echo going on?
That would be D. Hi, D.
Yeah, I used this stuff called Gold Shield. I got it from somebody here in the beginning. They sent me some stuff, and he always claimed that it was good for killing spores. I've been spraying it in my room whenever I clean things up. It sits in my room, and you know what? Those can be other reasons why I've been able to actually be able to get my garden's doing a lot better, because these are the steps that we're taking to kill these spores.
Definitely a good thing. So yeah, I just want to read a reply just to give you guys an idea of the level of this hash lab, because I got to give props to Tony. Someone asked on our Instagram, is UV the only treatment you're doing? How pure is the water? And so Tony came in and answered, we are running a commercial 5-filter RO system that then runs into UV sterilization before it hits the ionic pH plate system that gives us a range from 3 to 12 pH. Prior to a full cube ice maker and supply line to tanks stored inside the walk-in frostless freezer. It's considered lab-grade pure water and helps sustain the ice hardness, melt time, and agitation. We use UV sterilization wands and chambers for sterilizing bags, jars, tools, and utilize a pressurized steam system with the same water system with sterilized pouches. The walls are no VOC, antimicrobial, antipathogen, anti-mold that meet hospital healthcare specifications. The flooring is seamless hospital grade, meant for surgical rooms, so no resin or mildew or microbes or even blood can stain it. It's a 6,000 square foot facility hosting Prana, Blue River, and Bubble Man. Boom. Fucking proud of that guy. Had to share
That sounds like the labs that we need to have all over the world. Nice job.
Yeah, well, you got California always gets it first.
But these are the types of steps you have to take, that if you're going to be in the further environment, I mean, you have to look at those realities. It's not something you're going to produce in your basement or, in a side room somewhere. You have to go to these types of realities if you're going to play in the reality of the environment.
Wait a minute. You mean I can't do it in my kitchen? I promise I usually wear a hairnet.
Come on, I make it in my
Okay, bro, just for you, though.
Just for you. I would take anything you made in your kitchen, just being honest. Hey, welcome D420K.
He's got mine.
Brothers, sisters, hello everybody. How you doing out there?
Doing good, man. We talked about powdery mildew for the last couple of hours. It was pretty intense. I feel a little bit dirty, like I want to go have a shower.
I feel like I have to go check my garden. I want to go outside and check my garden. I'll be back.
I seen part of that this morning when I was watching. Before I jumped on here, I come down to my lab to see how my cure is on my bubble hash. I've got a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 pizza boxes with getting that last little bit of moisture out, wicking it out, and it's pretty nice. I gotta say, I'm looking forward to coming down and letting you try it out. Patrick, come over, do a bong rip, buddy, for everybody. I'm a little bit sick under the weather, so I'm not burning, but bong rip, mother lovers, let's go. This is my nephew Patrick. He's covering the bong rip for me today. Let's go.
He's covering the bong rip.
He's pinch hitting for you.
Yes. Yeah, that pizza box, buddy, was exactly what it needed. Thanks, bro.
Yeah, the desiccant.
I just I don't know why I didn't have that in my brain. I got onto the, it's trying to figure out you guys got your lab going down in California there that I was just listening to, and it just sounds, with what you described to me, it sounds fucking amazing. Like you haven't described it like you have described it to me on Hash Church yet, I don't think, and it would be pretty cool if you did. It is amazing. I know I'm not going to be able to have a facility like that yet, but the things that are working the best are the old school methods of what you've been teaching me. Fucking pizza box. I couldn't quite get the sizzle out of this because I was putting it on a rack and roll on this thing right here, using parchment paper, putting it on sheets like this, letting it cure, doing its thing. But this stuff here does not wick the water away, like when you put it in a pizza box and takes the very last little bit out that you don't want in there, that little bit of moisture that it's almost impossible to pull out unless you use a method like this, or you have a lab like they're building down in California, which there's not.
What kind of a finish and texture does it have? Is it like a paper cardboard box or corrugated cardboard box or different?
It's cardboard box. You can see in the middle, on the inside here, it's pretty open. The hash when it's finished is very, very dry, very crumbly, like sugar. And when it hits the bong, it just turns to liquid.
Darren used to always see the stacks of pizza boxes upstairs. Used to laugh at them. I always had them marked on my kitchen table every time you came over. Come on,
it works.
It's what works.
The only problem for me is I don't like pizza.
Well, you know what? I ordered 50 fucking large pizza boxes off U-Ship or some company that's getting delivered to my house. That all brand new, never had pizza in them. These ones have never had pizza in them either, but those ones I got a stack of 50 large. Dude, just to fucking use.
PK Brewer's busting your balls. He's like, it's like D420K never watched a BM how-to video. Jeez.
Yeah, well,
I was like, I know, dude. I've literally showed this in 28 videos, and he's asking me the other day. He's like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, have you watched the videos?
Well, I used to do the pizza boxes, but then I got on a kick of doing it a little bit more technology. Like trying to
walk-in freezer for those little trays.
Up a little bit and just do it a little better.
Well, but that's I wasn't doing Colorado style. Exactly, because it works for there where they have the low humidity, but here where the humidity is so high, especially this time of the year and this winter, has been serious precipitation.
Yes, but this
is like 30%
works.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad. I can't wait to see it and smoke the product. And you've still got it lined with parchment, so you're not doing direct contact.
That's
for those
right.
that might be worried about it. There's always someone worried about something.
But that old school methods, man. Yeah. I watched the videos. I did know that, but I was trying to kick it up a notch and be a little bit more technology, just a little bit better. But it wasn't doing it. Right back to the pizza box. And when you said the pizza box, it was like I got punched in the face. It was like, what the fuck? Of course.
I still have my 20 sitting on top of my tent here behind me.
Well, they're a go-to.
I remember going and get those pizza boxes. I was going to pizza places because I was doing this for a while, and I was like, yeah, I got this, like my kids. I don't have any kids, by the way. There's no kids, but they have this like thing going on at school, so can I get some pizza boxes because we're going to do some dessert on it. They had you a stack of them.
And I'd walk in and say, I am a hash maker and a grower, and I'm turning my whole crop into hash, and I need like 20 pizza boxes. And the guy would be like, fuck, that's super cool. Fuck, you can have them. Give me 20 flat yes. Pizza boxes that I just had to go home and put together.
Where I get my ice from, the girl at the shop, there's customers in line. I go to the BC liquor store here because the ice is cheapest here until I buy an ice machine. The lady gives me about 20 bags free every time. I pay for 30 or 40. But when she asked me, well, what do you need so much ice for? Or one of the customers in line, holy shit, that's a lot of ice. You having a party? I'm like, nope, making hash. Everybody stops and just kind of looks and goes back to their business like nothing happened. I just smile. Making hash, shitloads of it all day.
Yeah, well, it's the truth. And you know what? I find that it helps normalize the reality that it's, we had to always hide it. They wanted us to hide it. And I think in hiding that, it's sort of like part of the damage that was done was that we denormalized it. We put it in the closet, we hid it. Nobody got to see it. And now it's like at the point where you can hear people talking about it. There's people that are in this industry that I see them on planes when I fly, and it'll be like a super straight looking guy. And he'll just be like, I'm in the medical cannabis sector. Just got in a couple of years ago. And it's just like, it just makes me smile to see all these different people getting involved and enjoying the plant and accepting the plant. And as you should tell them you're making a shitload of hash, because what a great thing, D420K. Hash.
Well, it's something I'm definitely really, really proud about doing.
Yeah.
I love helping people. We give a lot of stuff. We make that Rick Simpson oil and stuff like that. And I know it's not the best stuff, but it's helping people. If I had a lab, and I will have what I need in here eventually, we'll work with what we can right now. It's just very fulfilling. I can spend days down here at this shop and make hash over and over and over, fill all the racks, and just, it's like I can't wait for it to cure. I just want it to do it now.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I'm giddy about hash making. I have been like that for a long time. It's like, really, I'm most anxious out of everything for Jamaica to pop so I can just go turn many, many, many plants into mountains of hash. That's my mission in life right now.
It's probably going to be pretty hard to get the humidity and stuff out of it unless you have your lab set up properly over there too. It's probably more humid over there or what?
Yeah, the lab will be sealed. It is sealed. There won't, and absolutely, it's tropical. It's so humid, man. It's unbelievable. It's like rain humid. But as is most of the tropics, when you get off that plane and you get hit with that hot, wet, humid heat, and then you sweat a little bit right away and you feel even more wet, at least if you're not from that environment. Seems that if you spend a decent amount of time there, you can pretty much get your body, your system used to it, so you're not constantly sweating like a pig. Although I have to say, my Jamaican friends put it pretty simple. I'd be like, man, I'm sweating. And they're like, you're moving too fast. Like, seriously, you're moving too fast.
I can see that from you.
Yeah. I never thought of that, though.
Run when you walk, pretty much.
I'm all trying to like walk slow in Jamaica and feel like I'm in slow motion because it's so forced. I just want to.
Yeah, you're every day. That's your rev, but you're working, you're running. Fuck.
Yeah, I run at 8,500 RPMs.
Pretty much. I've been there. I've seen it. I've tried to keep up.
You've seen me redline.
Oh yeah, fucking right. You've seen me redline too, a couple times.
Yeah, that's scary.
Nah, not too scary.
Scarier than when I redlined.
So humidity levels for hash. What are the humidity levels for hash? Like 0, 2, 3%? What are we thinking? What are we storing that at? How are we getting it so it doesn't keep buttering up on us?
Well, that's really up to it really depends on the person and the room that they have access to. And, as low as you can get it, obviously. Get the humidity down as low as you can get it. If you can create some Arizona in that bitch, then get her done.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Bovin has got something that will bring us down to that humidity level, so you can have like little rooms that are like 20% or something. Because a lot of people can't get those humidity levels down in their rooms. Like for me, in the summer, forget it. I'm not, there's certain things you just can't do if you don't have the room. I can't make my product.
How about put a dehumidifier in your cure room? Is that quickening it too much?
I ran the AC unit in the summer in my room to harvest.
I'll tell you one thing about that. This is literally the most important factor is drying the hash. It's pretty much the only thing as a hash maker you're responsible for. Everything else is pretty much being done for you if you're using like some type of a water hash kit like bubble bags, and even more so if you're using like a bubble now to mix it for you. At that point, really your job is to scoop piles of resin out of screen bags, clean the bags, which is part of it, take care of your tools so you don't create microbials and other nasties that might end up in your product later on. Clean those bags as good as possible. Don't let them heat up. But really what your most important thing is, and the only thing that you're really responsible for, is breaking the hash up into powder and allowing it to dry and cure. So dry in the sense the water that's on the outside of it is going to be removed, but also that wax membrane that holds moisture that seems to smoke very, very differently when smoked early compared to well cured. And if you change how you cure it, i.e. something as simple as like going from cardboard to parchment paper, or going into something, you know, like a lab grade harvest rights freeze dryer or some other vac system, you're definitely going to change drastically the end results. And it's subtle little things that you can do to the resin and massively change it. So what I would say to people is find the sweet spot of the resins you're working with, use a variety of the abilities that you have to go through and dry and cure that. Find the one that you like. For me, for Bubble Man's brand down in California, we're going to offer a variety of different cures so that people can choose what they like. We might have a cultivar that is dried old school tech, like on parchment and sealed in desiccant boxes that will remove the moisture, versus, you know, resin that was run fresh frozen, not cured, and run right into a freeze dryer. The whitest of whitest bubbles. These are different things that different people enjoy for different reasons. And I guarantee you, the same way recreational people have a choice, there's going to be, for people who are using it medicinally, certain ones that are more effective, even in the same cultivar, because the color that you're changing more than anything are those terpenes. And if we know that terpenes modulate the effects of cannabinoids, it makes sense that that would have an effect on the effects. Just going to read the chat here for a bit. See what everyone
Say it, Darren.
Say it what?
In the chat, it said there was one guy saying that I was in a basement lab. My basement lab. This is not a basement lab. This is a fucking shop. I spend money trying to up this game, trying to make it better, cleaner. I've got linoleum checkered flooring. I got plastic polyed walls, everything like that, to make it as clean and as sanitary as I possibly can.
Good job.
I'll smoke your hash.
Fuck yourself. Sorry, but yeah, I'm not taking no shit from anybody. This
As
is
you should not.
I spend money on it. I spend to make it better for people. So, like I said, I'm not saying it again, but you heard me the first time. The old branch.
Same way, dude. Every once in a while, I'll see some stupid shit in chat, and then luckily I can just delete and block them out because I don't really feel like.
I usually do. I just needed to reply to that one. That was. I don't like that. This ain't a basement. This is the upstairs, actually, of the shop.
Well, whoever Grat96 is saying didn't mean any disrespect. Sunny 20 fuck yes.
We spend time, energy, and money in building what we believe in to build and to produce our medicine. Like my lab, that I put every hard-in piece and polling and doing the corners and spent years and every penny. And if you say, where did I get my grow room from? Watch how I've grown my grow room over the last 5 years. And every little thing, and bringing in the proper things. So building those proper grow rooms takes time and energy. And great job, Darren, because you know what? Spent years to get to my grow room. Years. And a lot of hard work. So, I mean, y'all got to start somewhere. So if you don't have one, start working on your own grow room. Start working on your own little lab. Start with some poly, a little bit of work, a little bit of love. And, you know, I'm in there every day. So thumbs up to the guys that are working on their grow rooms and their labs.
I appreciate it. I
spent I spent $2.7 million on my factory in Kansas, which has a 1,400 square foot laboratory upstairs in it with bulletproof glass between that and the outside that has all kinds of analytical stuff available. And I don't see an end to that. I see increasing the investment as time goes on. And it looks like they're going to go for medical cannabis in Kansas soon. And there's around 7,000 acres of ditchweed growing around my factory, which I hope to put to use for the CBD and for the seeds that are there if they go medical. And I already asked the Chamber of Commerce, the local Chamber of Commerce, what about harvesting it if it goes legal? And they were like all for it. They offered to help me harvest it because they look at it as a noxious weed.
It's all good. I'll just smoke it.
Serious investment. Someone was saying that's a serious investment. Yep, I would say.
Go on, rip, mother lovers. Let's
There
go.
you go. That's what I wanted to hear, Darren. Bong rip.
Run the ball, man. A pitch hitter.
I'll have a bong rip. I kind of missed Easter today with my son. It was a bummer. I had to take my other son to ski school and then race back to start church, and I missed my youngest son waking up and like finding his little eggs, which I got to see a video though, so that's good.
Yeah, go for it.
Absolutely. All right, well, I'll have a bong rip. A little pinch of dry sift, a little spoonful of dry sift helps the medicine go down.
So y'all have had record snow up there in Canada, like here in California this year?
Yep.
Yeah, it's winter time up on top of the mountains right now.
So is there as much concern? Because I was reading there's big concern in Nevada because there's going to be a huge amount of water flowing down there that they have not had.
You need the water. So that's good.
Well, you need the water, but at the same time, a lot of these rivers and infrastructures aren't prepared for this type of inundation, whereas I think you are more prepared for it up there.
We're prepared mainly because we have the Pacific Ocean that surrounds us. So all of our water feeds into the Pacific Ocean. And so it's like
most of our water feeds into big pipes that go down to California now, actually.
Pacific Ocean, all the rainwater and the melt that comes off of these mountains go right into the Pacific. It's definitely better than running out of water like we did last year, Etienne. But at the same time, it's definitely going to cause havoc in the sense winter's been pushed back, so people in the backcountry are still doing backcountry sports like snowboarding and snowmobiling, skiing. That's definitely going to, once the melt comes in, and it'll be a big melt, there'll be avalanches, there'll be things that happen that are tragedies. There was just one in my backyard like 4 or 5 days ago. 5 people fell off a cornice, 500-meter drop off of a mountain, all snowshoeing behind my house. It was a terrible tragedy. 6 people, actually. One guy fell behind. And because he fell behind, he actually ended up living through the tragedy, and all of his friends passed away. So shout out to the hikers and the backcountry people in the world doing what you love. Sorry to see you go, but glad you went away that you enjoyed.
Be safe.
Yeah, be safe. Be safe. It's dangerous out there. Took my dirt bike up the mountain the other day, just ripped up behind the house up to the waterfall up there for a little session. And it's pretty gnarly up there. You definitely don't want to be going too far.
Is there any plants up there growing yet? Is anybody up there planting their outdoors? Because this is the season. If we had such a, I guess after the melt comes down, we got the water. Outdoor is going to be a great thing. It's May long weekend, April. We went through the May long weekend, so I think most people started planting their outdoors right now. But it was a little cold. It's cold out here right now, and if I put anything out there, I don't think it'd live.
No, it's pushed back right now for sure.
Yeah,
I wouldn't plant at normal time.
So, there's a lot of people, that's when they get ready to go here Easter. They're always planting their seeds or putting their clones outside. But by looking outdoors this morning and seeing the snow on those mountains, it looks like it's going to be a late season for growing outdoors this year, 100%. So, it'd be good to see what happens here next year with everybody being able to grow 4 plants per household in Canada. That starts in July. Hopefully that goes through.
How twisted is that they would start that in July and not in May?
Well, you know what? July, August, September. The whole thing is it's just the way I guess you're gonna put that platform out. And then really, if you put them down in June and seeds, or May, their seeds by the end, by the time it legalizes, they're gonna be big enough that you can put them outside. Like we're at a point right now that it'll be interesting in how they're gonna be able to enforce the 4 plant minimum maximum. But like I said, they put $2.3 billion into cannabis enforcement last year, so I think we'll be in really around that. But just get ready for every household to grow 4 plants. That's all I say, and that's a start. At least we're starting somewhere.
So are they going to be allowed to just buy seeds, or will they be allowed to buy
The
clones?
seeds, by the sounds of it, will be only be purchased through licensed producers, and clones, by the sounds of it. Now, I remember some companies started at the beginning by only housing mother plants and for cloning and for seeds. So we'll see where that happens. There isn't really a legal way of being able to purchase seeds. I can buy seeds through Health Canada in the past. I don't know if I can do that still through being MMAR.
But to say, what will the future be for these now recreational, adult using, Canadians?
Well, here's the whole thing.
Or access for them.
So it'd be something that you can actually argue and stuff like that. I get 4 plants. I get 4 seeds. One of those plant seeds are males. I produce my own seeds. So now I have my own variety that I'm growing. So, I mean, there's all these little things that are going to be challenged in court and stuff like that because, I mean, I'm not buying something from, like me personally, I'm exempted because I am MMAR. So that's where, I mean, I'm kind of in that realm. But a lot of people who...
So just to clarify, the MMAR are exempt from the plant number limits.
We're exempted from the laws in cannabis. We're held in that little bubble where we're protected under the injunction of where I stand with my license.
But
so
you
Mark
don't think
himself.
your license, you would still have to, not go over your plant count. Like we're still limited to our plant count.
You've been limited to your plant count, yes,
Yeah,
but I mean,
that's what he was asking.
Yes, yeah, I'm still limited to my plant count. I can have a lot more than 4 plants. I can carry a lot more than 30 grams. Carry 150. I can have a lot more, and it doesn't state how much you can store. So if I have 4
Your
plants,
license does.
Oh, my license does, but I'm saying in the new regulations, if you can have 4 plants 30 centimeters high, I mean, we all know that we can create, a plant this wide, 30 centimeters high by properly cleaning it.
100 centimeters high, not 30. It's 100
So
centimeters.
what's that, 30 inches?
Yeah, it's over 36. I mean,
yeah, so it's over 3 feet.
3 meters, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, just ways, but it'll be interesting on how the whole thing will pan out.
Yeah, they've actually made it really strict on seeds. If you have more than 30 seeds, you're essentially open to like 14.
Oh, really? See, I didn't read that part, Kamara. I've been reading it. Where's it?
Yeah, one of the new things the proposed legislation says is more than 30 seeds one seed is the equivalent of 1 gram of herbal cannabis. So,
Yeah.
And when the punishments kick in is if you're walking around
so how you
more
read
than
that?
grams. So
That's kind of illogical.
it's ridiculous, really, because today a seed weighs what the weight is, right? Now
It's all by seed weight. Right?
There's the bill. I just put the bill in there.
1 gram. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's in the act that's the proposed act that's just absolutely fucking stupid. But I think what they're doing is they're trying to, really make it scary and dangerous to be doing business the way that business is done today and not being part of the regulated system.
If you read it, you've read it, Kamara, I've read it. I've gotten to page 63 or something, but I mean, it's really geared on a big enforcement. It is. They're allowing legal cannabis, but with some really strict rules. As in, I mean, there's no selling, of course. I mean that remains the same, but the enforcement behind it is just, it's ridiculous. 14 years in prison. I mean, they can really hammer down. They can seize. An officer can seize your assets if he feels that you're doing something wrong and related to it. I mean, really, in reality, I mean, it's. I mean, I'm not concerned for myself, but I mean, it's just the way that they're trying to enforce these laws and make it. It's wow. It's pretty. We get legal, but at the same time, I mean, for the average one, I mean, you got to be so careful. And it'd be interesting on if I have 30 grams, how do they know it's not from my, are you selling it? Is it from your own garden? Is it from a licensed producer? You got to carry that bottle with the prescription on it. There's all these little things around packaging and stuff like that I just started reading. So whatever you read about the packaging.
They're going to start targeting people also that have what they consider illicit cannabis. So if you have outside the system, you're essentially not protected, which is going to be, I mean, it's an impossibility to try and police something like that. It's just,
all of it is an impossibility to try and police. And then I would also add that when you see things that are like 14 years, it's easy to pull that out and say 14 years. It's like, yeah, well, currently it's life in prison in Canada. This is what there's a charge.
Yeah, that's right too.
So think of that. It's like people are always like, yes, it sucks, it's horrible, it's brutal, but everyone's going to be able to grow 4 plants that they're not going to be able to enforce. And like 60 million plants, so they're going to be able to go and check the height on those plants and make sure you only have 30 grams. And there's just going to be more.
But no, they are. Like they clearly intend to. It says clearly in the act if there's.
We'll see.
They find the plants that
they've done so well at the war on drugs so far. We'll see how it continues.
My license.
Yeah, but what the point that I'm trying to make is that they haven't removed. You remember when they said that they were going to have a stakeholders meeting about this a long time ago when they first started talking about legalization?
Vaguely.
Yeah, 2012.
Stakeholders was the police. And so the police, through Bill Blair or whoever it was, have done a really fucking good job on holding on to the money that they had to enforce, cannabis law in Canada. It's like, it would have been really nice if they had taken the approach of getting the police not involved with cannabis and make it more like alcohol,
Well, I suspect as well that they're not really free to do things in any way that they want to do them, that they're probably between a rock and a hard place in the sense that how are they even doing this? How is Canada federally legalizing cannabis in the world today where like our neighbor America is not? And they're kind of like call the shots all the time. Like we just line up behind America because holy shit, they'll fucking fire 59 Tomahawk missiles at you.
That argument would have worked like 10 years ago, but the way I see it, weed is more legal in the States than it is in California. You might disagree if you're than it is in Canada. You might disagree if you're in Mississippi or Louisiana, but if you're in Colorado or California,
it depends on where you're standing. It's hard to generalize and make anything but a stupid comment because it is amazing what's happening in places like Washington. You just got to go to i502data.com on their website and look at all the money that's coming in legally to the producers, to the tax people, to everything, the communities, all that's circulating around the cannabis industry. There's no way it's not. The rents they're paying, the electricity they're buying, the fertilizers, the food they get from the auxiliary businesses around the grows, all of it. Everyone's making money now, and that's a good thing.
Well, I can prove that cannabis is freer in California. I'll give out Todd's address. He's got free cannabis for everybody that shows up.
I'm going. Oh, wait.
I'd be happy to grow everybody in the world free pot. That would be a great thing. What are you doing today? I'm growing everybody.
I think the big thing
like
for a cannabis, like, for it to be legal for real is that you can travel over the imaginary borders within your country. And that's a huge difference that people just can't imagine when it's just not a reality.
But you know what though, when we first went to Europe, that's what it was like to go to Germany. We had to cross over the border and that was scary as fuck. And and then afterwards it wasn't like that. You could drive all the way to Spain, go all the way through France, go into Spain, not touch no border.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've done it. I've taken the drive. It's awesome.
If you drive from Spain to France, though, I mean,
oh yeah,
you're pretty much getting searched at some
God damn straight at the.
I didn't. I drove from Amsterdam down and back, and I didn't get stopped or searched anywhere.
Very rare. That's like going through Germany. One time, I didn't get stopped from Holland. The border had closed, and they just went to bed, and we drove through late at night, puffing hash out of a little glass pipe.
Well, I go across all international borders around Europe fairly often, and I've never been stopped except for going in and out of Switzerland. But I didn't drive down to Spain either and come back because traditionally that's where all the Moroccan comes up from Spain, and so they're looking for it.
Spain through to France, they shut down highways. They have police at the toll highways. Like, they might not be at the border, but there's a lot of fucking policing that happens.
They got a lot of dogs.
They just profile cars. Like,
hold on. In France, it's illegal to have pot leaves on your clothing.
Exactly.
And that really freaked me out because it is that oppressive. Never mind a joint in public. If you have a pot leaf on your hemp jacket, you can expect a cop to come over to you and be like, "What are you carrying?" That's fucked up, but it's true.
I found that to be very fucked up when I was in France. Even in the late 80s, it was very harsh.
The best thing to do is have either some cheese or a bottle of wine on your T-shirt. Then you're fine.
Hey, what's up? I like cheese and wine. All right, carry on. Carry on.
Don't you think that border will dissolve someday between Canada and it's the silliest one probably that exists in the whole world, in all honesty.
The border's gotten stronger because of the whole problem with terrorism the last year or two. Before that, the Shingle Agreement made sure that everybody could do everything. Now there's restrictions.
Well, now we have to, as Americans, now that we travel to Europe, we're going to have to go through visas because of the new Trump rule of fucking with those European countries. The EU voted that to travel now from the United States to Europe, we have to get visas.
Well, it's about time they did something to keep you rednecks out.
That's Rouge neck, sir. Rouge.
Oh, shit.
My name's Etienne, goddammit.
Etienne Fontaine.
My wife is has French genetics in her blood too, so yeah.
No French. These are Basque. Sorry, not French.
Well,
but
she
Basque.
is Basque also.
Well, I'll accept that. We'll have
Basque, French.
I'm sure their family has blown up many more French and Spanish people than yours.
I was an artillery, sir.
Watch out.
Too much. What's everyone up to on this Sunday afternoon after Hash Church? You guys got any Easter plans, or is it growing cannabis?
I was going to hide eggs, but I didn't know how long it would take anybody to find them because nobody ever comes and visits me.
Yeah, right. You have epic people come visit you all the time.
But if they're boiled eggs, you got to keep them refrigerated. It's better maybe to poke a hole in the end and fill them up with confetti.
You could literally do a show in your living room like Jerry Seinfeld does in his car. And just like every time someone really cool came by, you could just be like, all right, let's just, turn the camera on and chat and puff bowls and see where this goes. I would watch that show. Just saying.
Are you and the family doing anything this afternoon and evening?
My family. Oh, you're talking to Marcus.
I don't know. I assume
everyone.
You could have been talking to anyone.
I have no plans whatsoever. My family is in Asia, going to be in South Africa, and in America. So,
damn, covering the gamut there.
We're pulling down Congos here today.
Oh, nice! I love that.
Does Congo get mildew?
Not really. No, it's actually quite powdery mildew resistant.
Cool.
So it's a nice thing. Yeah.
There it is. Mitch named the show. Mitch named the show. It's going to be called Sam in the Dam.
Or just Damn Sam.
Yeah, it could turn into Damn Sam eventually. It could kind of be like you next to the big plant with the desk and the bong. One guest.
Or that really big damagey that they have, the cement one at Roken Square.
There you
go. Across the street from the palace.
The palace, the Krasnopolsky.
Yep, right in front of that.
Ah, the Krasnopolsky.
No, in front of the big gold turtle. That's where it should be.
Yeah, but that's the biggest damagey in town. They got lots of the metal ones that are, 4 feet tall, but this one is much taller.
It's a monster.
There's Jake.
Jake's in the house.
Now go for it. Okay. How's it going?
Hey, what's going on, Jake?
Hey, Jake.
Hey. Everybody.
Happy Easter, Jake.
Happy Easter. Thank you. Happy Easter to all you guys too.
Absolutely. Been pretty chill. We've been talking a lot about powdery mildew today.
I'm just dealing with that myself.
Fuck.
Recently?
Yeah.
This is the season.
Okay, now I want to go look at my garden.
What's the variety that you're growing?
What variety am I growing?
Yeah.
The one that's being affected the most.
The OG.
Yeah, good.
Oh,
mildew, huh?
Yeah.
I don't believe it. What did you say, Chimera? I want to hear
the kush with powdery mildew, huh? That's a surprise.
I could kind of see it on your smile that it was something along those lines, but I needed to see it just in like a little.
There is a product called Nova.
Yeah.
Myclobutanol. Yeah, we all know about the Nova.
Myclobutanol. Yeah, that's the one that they.
I found out today that if you use apple cider vinegar and water, will do the same thing.
But without the poison part.
Exactly.
That's fucking awesome. Just what is that? The changing of the pH, really? Is that really what that's doing more than anything?
Probably.
Well, can we get some experts' opinion on that? Like Chimera, I want to hear your opinion on the apple cider. And Todd, Mark, I'd like to.
I've never used it myself. I remember there was a PM, there was a leaf thing. I'm of the school, if you want my opinion, when it gets PM, kill it, get rid of it, fucking sterilize and bomb the room. That's my opinion. I'll pass it on to Chimera and Todd.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. PM is known to grow in an acidic environment, so usually the treatment is to actually change the pH the opposite way, to raise the pH.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different products that you can use for doing that. We're really trying to stay into the organic world, like what works organically and is not poison, because we all know you can use Nova or Eagle 20 or whatever else, mouth stocks, but we're trying to now produce crops that nobody does that, right? So
I think a large part of the conversation that's going missed is that we are, especially as indoor growers or greenhouse growers, we're cutting the plants out of having any UV because it's just an inherent part of the, shields we're putting up, the glass we're using. And I think we're seeing that, maybe nature has it right. Maybe we need to have some UV in our gardens. And
but
it's not UV because there's varieties that you can grow indoors under the same setup and they don't get powdery mildew.
And there's varieties you can grow outdoors that do get UV and they still get powdery mildew.
There's plants that will grow right beside a plant with powdery mildew that will not have powdery mildew on it at all.
Absolutely.
Like the line I had down the line.
Yeah, the question is, are any of them Kush? Right? Kushes are pretty known to get just devastated by PM.
It's pretty solid for years, hasn't it? We haven't had that problem. This PM has just started coming up. We've been growing the Kush for at least 8 years. At least, and it's just starting to show up now.
Are you packing it in tighter? I mean, is there less light levels, less airflow?
I don't think so. No, I think we've done pretty good on our rooms. Mark's been in our rooms. John's been in our rooms.
Well, it's also given years for these plants to also this bacteria to adapt to cannabis because it's adapting as well but in the past people really hadn't as much problem with it, but recently it seems to have broken through that 40% humidity threshold and has really caused problems up and down the West Coast.
Maybe there's mutated varieties which are can use a wider environmental space to cause problems.
Johnny mentioned those Quest dehumidifiers earlier in the show, and I've used those in the past. They're little pro ones that you wheel around, not the installed ones, but they're killer. They do make a huge difference.
Huge.
Stuff like not leaving water on the floor of your room, making sure that you have some kind of system that takes away the water from overwatering your plants, be it in tables or anything.
You need to have trays, stuff like that.
Yeah, but I've seen trays where people they don't put drainage in the trays, they just leave the water in the trays, and that's kind of the same thing as leaving it on the floor.
I think high humidity levels are even worse for botrytis than they are for mildew.
Well,
how about essential oils like garlic and thyme and essential oils that you could spray on your plants? What were the ones that you used? I
don't want to taste that in my resin.
Yeah, I've never done that.
I don't want to taste it in my resin.
Well, I'm not talking about spraying it on your plant when it's in bud. This stuff has to happen while it's in veg if it's going to happen. But
mildew gets worse the more it flowers. So that's not always going to work.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I really, like I said, that stylet oil, I'm a big fan of in veg on mother plants. It's incredible stuff. They don't actually sell it up here in Canada. You got to import it. but it works really, really well.
I think you can only get it industrially here in the United States.
Yeah, they sell it in like whatever 10 gallons or 5-gallon containers, or 30s, right? They sell big ones too. But I think that's actually the equivalent of what they use under the ACMPR system in Canada. They use that canola oil, and I think that's probably designed to do the same thing, right? But it's a plant-based oil, not a petroleum byproduct. So, but anything you don't want to be spraying on flowers. But you really want to have these things taken care of well before you hit flowering. I mean, if you got PM before you hit flowering, damn,
Don't flower.
Trouble.
If you got PM before you start flowering, don't flower. That's the best advice I can give you.
I know a couple of guys too that are right into the whole bricks. You know what bricks is? Like the sugar content of the leaf and the pH of the leaf.
Well, that's what bricks is. They spray it on the last week of flower, and it basically it's like a protectant in a way, but it's also an increaser of development. I know the product through Green Planet and stuff like that. So
bricks is a measurement.
Is there a what?
It's a measurement. It's a tool. It's like a pH meter. You can take the bricks value of the sap of the plant.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it's very commonly done to determine maturity of grapes, for example.
Yeah, it's a measurement of sugar content, I think. But you know, I know a bunch of guys that are really serious about that whole practice, and they measure the pH of the sap, and they're convinced that there's a certain pH of the sap where you won't get powdery mildew, right? That it's essentially an opportunistic fungus that it can really do its damage when things aren't ideal and the plant's over the hell.
And do you think that's true?
No idea. I haven't really actually looked at it.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know either way. It would be interesting to know.
Yeah.
Well,
most of these things just haven't been studied properly. You know what I mean? Some grower says, I did this and it worked, and that's not how you do science. You have to have controls, right? You have to have an experiment going alongside it where it didn't get the treatment. One thing we have talked about on church today in terms of powdery mildew is potassium bicarbonate. Has anybody mentioned potassium bicarbonate?
No.
So potassium bicarbonate is like baking soda is sodium bicarbonate. And potassium bicarbonate is a very similar salt, but instead of having, when you put it into water, the carbonate ion and the potassium disassociate, so they come apart in the water mixture, and it's the bicarbonate ion that actually kills the spore. Like, it'll fry the spore. You can search it up online, search green cure or potassium bicarbonate powdery mildew, and you can see the electron micrographs. So that works really well. But it's,
do you leave it on the plant, or do you wash it off afterwards?
Don't mistake it for sodium bicarbonate, because sodium bicarbonate is actually not good for the plant. Sodium is toxic to plants. So definitely hunt out the potassium bicarbonate if you're going to try it. And sorry, Sam, I didn't hear what you were saying. I was trying to finish.
What I meant was, after you use the product and you've solved your problem, can you wash it off, or do you leave it on the plant?
Well, it would come. You'd spray it. It would come off in just a water spray. It's not it's like baking soda. So we're not talking about some big, dangerous chemical, right?
Well, also,
the chemical is actually used in soda water to actually make it less acidic. It also raises the alkalinity of the water.
That's right. It raises, and thus the leaf surface too. So that's one of the things about PM is it said that it likes a slightly acidic environment. You can also use it really strong to clean your room. When you're done, it's like that will fry powdery mildew spores. So, and it's cheap. I remember buying like an 80-pound bag of it from PNW in Vancouver for like $80. So, definitely to have a good tool to have in the powdery mildew toolbox.
I'm pretty sure I have lots of tools in my powdery mildew toolbox.
To be honest, I hated to treat powdery mildew. I like to know how to do it, but what I really wanted to do was see which plants were susceptible so I could get rid of them.
What's in your toolbox, Johnny?
Proper humidity control, environmental control. I use a UVC light. Of course, you know what? I use neem oil before I go into flowers, so I'm always spraying my room down, my plants, and before getting any bugs or anything like that. That's what I did with this crop. I think I did that all on video and what I was doing. I used the nemesis nematodes in the root zone, so just biological, and that was about it. And then, so far, fantastic. The room was doing tremendous after the big bug infection I had last year and the PM just before that. I had the PM before surgery, had surgery, tried growing again after. So at the same time, before and all the problems I had in the room was because I was unable to keep up the cleanliness and the upkeep of the room, of going in every day, maintaining my humidity controls, making sure things were running properly. So now that I'm back into better health and stuff like that, so was my garden. So it's just basically keeping up with your garden and being able to control those humidity levels and making sure that you're not getting all these fluctuations and leaves aren't touching and they're getting proper airflow. And hey, I mean, it's just good gardening is what all it takes, and anybody can kind of grow it. It's just, staying on top of it. Being lazy was the thing that would happen with me at the same time. It was hard for me to continue growing my garden at those points. So it showed it in those results of why I was unable to continue doing what I'm doing today, is being able to be there for my plants and for my garden.
And do you think you have gravitated away plants that easily get mildew? Or do you think if you control your environmental conditions enough, you can make any plant not get mildew? I don't think we can hear you. I think your mic is off.
Oh, sorry. I believe if you have those proper conditions, then Sam, you should say. Can the PM at that point live in that environment? No, it shouldn't be able to. Once you find out the environment for that specific plant, and that happened with my strain, I know the environment it lives in, so I don't now. I'm not getting the PM problems which I was getting in the past, is because I wasn't controlling the proper environment for that genetic, maybe. And it's taken me years to be able to dial in what feeding program, like with any strain.
What is your humidity range, John, that you feel that you use that inhibits growth of the PM?
I'll make sure I don't go over 60% humidity. That's for one thing. At night, my humidity levels go down to about 42 to 45%. And during the day, they're up between 58 to 60. Sometimes the room was around 55. That's my particular strain.
And that's what it lives between 40 and 60 at all times.
Pardon me?
So your room is at a low of 40 and a high of 60.
Max 60. My humidity levels fluctuate within about 10 to 15% between night and day.
Sam, I have a couple of questions for you. Since
Sure.
You're one of the longest growers here. First question is, when did you first cite white powdery mildew? And
I never saw it on cannabis in California until after the introduction of Afghan wideleaf varieties.
And when was that?
I think the first one I saw was after I came back from Afghanistan. So it must have been the end of 71 or 70, very beginning of 72.
And when did you, second question is, when did you start?
There was Afghans in California before that, but I hadn't seen them growing myself.
Or them bred with other genetics. But the second question was then with the when you started to find white powdery mildew in your garden and started to notice that your equatorials were not as susceptible.
I never saw it. I never saw it until I moved to the Netherlands. I never saw it in California.
Because I noticed because I've only grown here in California. I did grow in West Virginia, but I never noticed white powdery mildew until I was here in California. But that's where, I'd say it was back in the.
I had high light levels and I had a pretty dry atmosphere. That might have helped.
Right.
But and I did have some wideleaf varieties which do get mildew, like Afghani #1. It, depending on the clone, it can be very susceptible.
But again, it's environment. And if there are other plants that have been introduced in the environment since you left and went to Amsterdam, that could be a good reason why there's powdery mildew all over this area now, all
Yeah.
over Santa Cruz.
Also,
you are hard pressed to find pot grown in Santa Cruz, Humboldt, Mendo that hasn't had growers battling the shit.
True, absolutely true. But I can't help but wonder, I mean, how much powdery mildew from cannabis spores are in the air? I know that there's powdery mildew spores floating around, but if there's only 3 species that are truly attacking cannabis, then it doesn't seem like we could put enough up in the air to get everybody else.
So it would lead more to what Todd was saying. It leads more to the theory that there seems to be systemic infections.
Well, it could be infection being spread through clones also, or seeds, whatever.
Correct, because they're
part of the problem is you want to grow Girl Scout cookie, you want to grow this stuff, you're going to get it because it's in the strains that are being passed around at all the clubs. It's systemic and it's environmental. So it's a combination of 2 things happening. You know, everybody wants these great strains that are kind of prone to get it. And all these strains have been somewhere that they could have picked it up.
Correct. It's like having the HIV virus. It doesn't mean you're going to get full-blown AIDS, but you still, it inherently has the virus.
Yeah, if you don't, especially if you don't treat it. It's not a virus, though. We shouldn't say that because it's just
correct. I was just.
But you're right. The analogy is totally correct.
That's what all I was going for, is analogy only.
Yeah. So which comes up to the ethics of, is it okay to use like sprays like Eagle 20 or Nova on like the myclobutanol products? Is it okay to use it to sterilize cuttings? And then how long does it take to get out of the plant, right?
Well, it's the highest testing product in cannabis that we find.
That therefore then should be the threshold if you can detect it, right?
Well, there has to be an analysis for what a threshold of detection number is. There's no applicables for inhaled ingestids like cannabis, so it's a known unknown. You know, there has to be actual studies, and nobody wants to even touch it. And then the only studies that you can get here in America, you can only get access to, as we know, weed that is already moldy to begin with, which is the NIH.
A good example is neem. I understood recently they did studies and they think it might be carcinogenic if smoked.
And that's an issue. That's an issue because people have been, using that as a biological, for.
Yeah, it is a biological.
I stopped using it in the 90s, just because of extracts. I mean, the more I learned about the fact that I wanted what was on the edges of it, I didn't want anything contaminating, which brings me around to water again, because I think that as we learn more about ionized water, we're going to find out that we can just use high pH, high alkaline water to rinse off and to maintain our gardens, because if we create an environment that it can exist, we will have an advantage over it. And whatever you want to call it, it is a pain in the ass. One of the things I was thinking about doing before was setting up the misters like you see in a supermarket when you're near the vegetables and they come on periodically, and just pumping high alkaline water in there and misting the atmosphere and the plants, because then it couldn't ever establish itself in that type of high pH environment, and it wouldn't hurt the plants, and it wouldn't be any type of chemical solution. I mean,
Todd, do you bring air from outside?
I've seen it in both rooms. I've seen it in rooms that are AC sealed rooms with a carbon filter and other things, trying to turn it over, and it pops up. And I've seen it in fresh air rooms that turn rooms over. So I've seen it. It's so weird. It pops up in places, and then there'll be a plant next to it, like you're saying, that doesn't have it at all, which makes you really then think and go, Jesus Christmas, did this thing bring it in on its back? And it probably did. Right?
I've had the same clone for 25 years, and every year I grew it with low light, low temperatures, low airflow. It would get some powdery mildew on it. And what I would do the next year is take clones from the top of the plant, and they grew vegetative and flowered without problems. But after that, there would be problems. You could grow a crop, but it was hard to maintain them when you were trying to do it in a very casual way with very low light levels over the winter.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, guys, you know what? Easter Sunday, lots to do. Happy Easter to everybody. Have a fantastic day, as always.
Thanks for coming out, Johnny B. Peace out, brother. We'll talk to you soon, I'm sure. I'm also going to call church. Today was kind of PM church, you know, but lots of good information, lots of good conversation. Hope everyone...
well, it's the biggest problem that everybody faces, so I think it's a good one to address.
That or spider mites is a big problem, too.
Ooh. Yeah, that'll be next church, I think.
The other thing I want to say one before you go is another product, Xeritol. I don't know if you guys know Xeritol, but it's essentially hydrogen peroxide and the hydrogen peroxide version of vinegar. So it's like vinegar with an extra oxygen atom. And they both are good for killing spores and cleaning.
Can you spell that out, please?
Xeritol, Z-Z-E-R-O-T-L-L.
And have you used it?
Yep, for sure. It's great.
Cool. I've never used that one either.
Little Canadian slipping out there with the Z. I like that.
Yeah, well, you got to correct it for the Americans so they know what we're talking about.
They're like Zebra. Awesome. I'm Canadian. It sounded normal to me. Thank you guys all for coming out. D420K and the crew, Chimera and Etienne, Skunkman Sam, Indra, Todd McCormick. We had Johnny B, who's left us, and Kevin McKernan, who was in earlier as well. And we'll be back next week. We'll be chatting about all sorts of different things, cannabis related. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next week. Peace.